capitalism, all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi apartment buildings or multifamilies that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number, or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know,
It's
Zach.
a tough
This
one.
is
I know,
really hard.
and maybe
Yes.
comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. Tonight, after a long hiatus, having to deal with buying a house, which my wife and I finally did buy a house. We're moving in on the 17th, so we're quite excited about that. But after having to go through tons of paper signing and
Adulting?
inspections and adultings and signing this and that, signing your life away, probably, maybe, hopefully not, but it's hard to know with so many pages being signed. But anyway, we're through the thick of it. We're gonna we're in the part that's a little bit easier. So anyway,
You thought
hopefully. Oh,
you thought college debt was debt slavery.
oh my
Just wait
god.
till you have
Yeah,
mortgage debt.
right. Well, I mean, it really underscored just how big of a deal it is to be part of the so-called property class, I guess.
Hmm.
Just how many gates they throw up there to make sure you're one of the deserving ones. And when it comes down to it, we're paying someone's mortgage right now, renting. It's just not our mortgage.
Hmm.
So to have so much rigmarole, so much checks and double checks, and like
Yes.
basically have to open up your entire financial history for the last 5 years, including your bank accounts, all your credit reports, everything, um, just so that I can pay my own mortgage rather than someone else's. It just kind of shows just how little they want most people to be in that position.
It's also a let's see. I had thought, but I'm actually distracted now. I'm posting the link in my Facebook feed.
Oh yeah, no problem. So anyway, tonight, Dan of the Three Left Show, and
No,
also no, I'm sorry, the rebrand, the What's Left Albany, What's Left in Albany. Excuse me.
there you go.
Do you have a new website then too, or are you still going with the Three Left Show
No,
dot
it's
news?
it's three left
Okay,
stud.
cool.
But perhaps there'll be a moment where the domain will change. I'll get a new domain.
Yeah.
But those are steps that are just so low priority right now. Major priority major priority is learning the new software that has been bought for my radio community radio station. So it's basically up to me to learn it first and then teach others. Um, and rebuild the schedule there. So it's I
Okay.
was just learning the creator side of it, not too complex, but there's things that you can get wrong, and I
Sure.
did fail in that the broadcast computer I'm working on wasn't able to connect to the transmitter. So I was switching
Hmm.
it to the what would be the automation, the broadcast computer, but nothing was play. I was just static. It wasn't coming through. It was odd because when the techie guy was there, it worked, but that was before I changed the OS on the computer to Windows.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious if that mattered. I may just have to call him, but that's a side issue.
Yeah.
Um, so much. Let me just go over quickly. Well, it won't be quickly, but I guess. But I went to Brooklyn, which isn't too
Nice.
far away from me, by the way. It's just a long weekend for Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, Columbus
Yeah.
Day. Um,
Right.
just gotta just when you have a long weekend, just take another day off, and now it's like a mini half a week vacation. So I went down to stay in Little Caribbean in Brooklyn, where my friend is
Hmm.
now has his new digs, which it's not cheap, but they got really tired of living with like an in-law for or brother for like better part of the last decade. So just him and his husband now. So it's quite a small apartment. It's a standard New York City apartments, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's the right size for them, I suppose. It's
Yeah.
got the 10 by 10 living room, 10 by 10 kitchen, 10 by 10 bedroom, yeah, and a bath.
Yeah.
But
Just enough space for a human habitation.
and two toy dogs, though it's just one, but they were sitting for sisters.
Oh,
So
nice.
anyway, while I was there, went to the Transit Museum, the Numtot's dream come true. The which is in
I do
a
actually envy that. Yeah.
The Transit Museum is in a unused subway station. So the exhibits, pictures, and other things are on the subway level, the station level, and then the track level is, it was built as a real station, so they can just ride all the vintage cars in there and just stack them up along the platform. So
Hmm.
it's very nice.
That
Um,
sounds really cool.
and I also just stopped by like a dozen or so art galleries, since some art museums charge quite a lot. But you go to 20 art galleries, and it's like you've been to a whole museum.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
they're all in the same neighborhood, Lower East Side. I got a classic
Very
bagel
cool.
with cream cheese and lox. It was
The
delicious.
schmear.
Delish.
Yeah. There you go.
It was delish.
Mm-hmm.
Got a French dinner that I very much overpaid for, but at least that's what you got to do to get a dish that you don't usually eat, which
Yeah.
was eggplant Napoleon. To actually have a fried eggplant that
Ah,
was actually good, because I can tell you,
nice.
you get it from a standard Italian place or Olive Garden, it sucks.
Well,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
and
not high standards at all.
this
Garden.
time it was as good as what I would make at home.
There you
It's what it
go.
took. Anyway, and then a bucket of mussels, which I can't really get up here,
Ooh, nice.
which is great. Belgian mussels, which apparently it's only in New York. It's only in New York City such a place exists.
Okay.
Otherwise, I guess you have a fancy restaurant where maybe they will have a mussel dish, but it won't
Mm-hmm.
be the same. Um, like in Albany, we have a seafood place. It's Cajun, and they had but instead of a bucket, it was in a bag. Like they would make it in a bag. So it was the same kind of dish, but it was in a bag, so it just felt kind of uh, trashy, even though it was same price.
Yeah.
But it was also Cajun flavors. So I'm like, well, this isn't
I love
French with the
some
cream
good
sauce.
Cajun flavor.
With
Yeah.
the cream sauce. But anyway, I stopped by Blue Stockings. That's the anarchist bookshop that's in the Lower East Side. Um, and I got, of course, the first thing I see when I come in is "Abolish the Family" by
Nice.
Sylvia. So I had to pick that up. And a manifesto for care and liberation. But what I also picked up was occult features of anarchism.
Hmm.
So this is
Occult features of anarchism.
occult. Occult.
Yeah, yeah.
So it summarized so it starts with the similar kind of conversations that we might be having about with people with conspiracy theory minded, and this
Hmm.
ties into Mr. Ye X, and
Yeah. Boy.
the it's very like when we talk of like the working class subject and how they understand the world, it's usually in terms of conspiracies, or it's she was trying to dissect her own academic leanings. The writer Erica Laganese, and she was in her anarchist collective, like you do, doing anti-globalism work. But of course, she had one guy who his anti-globalism is tied to being anti-Semitic, or his way of understanding globalism is the Jews controlling things. And had never heard of this before, and so she did her research, which shows how bubbled she was, I guess.
Huh.
She does her research into that, debunks it, has another conversation. Not sure if she got dissuade him completely, but maybe a little. And then continues down the rabbit hole into a wider thing. Of course, I haven't read the whole thing. I'm just giving a summary of what I understand so far.
Mm-hmm.
Major summary is she goes into Freemasonry and how she wanted to how anarchist cells, and why is it on the left, or certain types of leftists kind of
Mm-hmm.
really gravitate towards, or at least especially the working class, not from an academic point of view, and they were like how they form knowledge. Why do they gravitate towards conspiracy theory? So she spends like the last chapter just going into like this conspiracy theory as a thing, but also how anarchism's roots are in Freemasonry.
What?
Freemasonry. Well, when you think about it, the original
Mm-hmm.
Freemasons were clubs of uh, working class, not so much working class, but they were professional, but they were craftsmen
Mm-hmm.
who were obviously not very high on the economic totem pole, and they created social clubs to self organize, and so they very much have the same qualities as your anarchist cell or collective, and they did things in secret or not so much secret, but they would have secret ways of doing things that were obtuse, and obviously it's not the same thing as anarchism today. But as far as the source of anarchism as a concept in the West or European thought, it seems to come from it's in the Freemasonry circles that you get Enlightenment ideas of everything.
Huh.
But I think she also points out that it was maybe not it was her, but someone else talking about this in the magazine that Douglas Lane runs, Sublimation.
Sublation Media.
Yeah, Sublation Media. I've
Yeah.
been listening to everything of his now.
I like him.
But well, he's his guest basically, and how the okay, it was a different topic, but it was the how in the Enlightenment, when things went wrong with the French Revolution, there was this kind of blaming of the people, and or like that it was it was about like positive. Damn it. Okay, I'm getting off track, but totally different thing here. So,
Okay.
but it was like there's this gap between what we feel things ought to be and what is, and in
Yeah.
that gap, there's this chasm that's usually filled with solutions that are about getting around our humanity, or that like it's people who are the problem. We
Hmm.
are not good enough to get where we ought
Oh,
to be,
so if
and
only
so
people were kinder hearted or more generous, then we would have a movement.
it gets personalized, it gets
Sure.
individualized, and so you get these individual. The gap, as she says, like is filled with these emotional not tricks, but emotional crutches of things that are pretty good, like personal advice or tactics, like meditation, um, doing countercultural things, but you take these things that are personal solutions and then you make them social solutions,
Mm-hmm.
which is terrible because then it just becomes, well, people aren't doing things right, and then you
Yeah.
have to manage them, control them, and it gets autocratic, authoritarian, a
Yeah.
mask really quick.
Sure.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
let's let's go to the since I'm on the conspiracy theory thing, let's go to. I don't want to take too long to rant about Kanye,
Uh-huh.
and the clips, which are kind of funny when they're short, but when they're longer, they're infuriating and actually do concern me for the long term, especially in the context that Trap House was kind of commenting that, like, pretty, makes sense that he's the next version of Trump. It's not DeSantis, it's not some other
Yeah.
Republican, it's Kanye or some other celebrity. But
Yeah.
Kanye has obviously
Oh
stepped
man.
up as being the protege or the
Yeah.
next version of Trump, from TV show host, celebrity, to TV to music.
Uh-huh.
So he has probably even wider audience.
Yeah.
Even though it's all men, not women, but so it's there. They joked about how it's going to be a gender split instead of black and white, or white versus non-white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'll rant, because to put it as he would, I am Jew. I am Jew.
Oh my God.
When he says he's Jew, he's
Yeah.
Jewish because of he learned of a black Israelite framing. He doesn't. God, he's so fucking dumb. I
He
just
is.
yes, the music is catchy and fun.
Sure,
Um,
it's a good pop
truly
artist.
admit it.
Yeah,
But he's definitely a sufferer of being too successful, too quickly, too
yeah,
young, too much.
yeah.
And
And
and since he's a teenager, he's probably been surrounded by people who tell him he's great, and nobody like
sure.
complains. And
And he
so,
almost certainly has bipolar, so I'm sure his manic
yeah.
episodes don't help with that sort of god complex.
But
But
this
yeah,
is not an excuse because
no, 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 no,
I have a
not an excuse
communist
at
friend
all.
who's bipolar,
Uh
and
huh.
though he's not an effective organizer or activist, he is not a creep guy who, he does actually
Right.
see conspiracies everywhere, but
Yeah.
not in a serious way that he rants about them out like in the world all the time, and it affects what
Right.
he does.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
it's interesting that way, but Kanye, but you get it's the combination of being a complete narcissist through his fame
Uh
and
huh.
success,
Uh
and
huh.
being a billionaire, and
Right.
what I can rant about is how you can be a billionaire. He's won the game, but he can't hate the game because he's won it, but
Right.
he's not happy, so he has to hate on the players. Don't hate, like, hasn't he never heard? Don't hate the players, hate the game.
That's right. Yeah.
But like
That,
he's such a child emotionally and intelligently that I think he naturally knows, not naturally, but like through his skill, he's developed the skills of music making, but
mhm.
nothing else. I guess maybe he never
Oh yeah.
had to, because
No.
there was always someone else he could hire or people would help him, and never recognized. I'm not even sure maybe he should get the Palin treatment, and someone needs to ask him, do you read? Can you read?
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure he can read, because he talks like someone who's never read anything in his
Oh,
life.
I don't. No, I don't think so. I don't think he has at all. Like, he. I mean, he's
I'm
never
saying that as a
quoting
bigoted
anybody.
way, because
No, 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 no.
there are ways of talking the way he talks, ironically and in all slang, but
Hmm.
it doesn't infuriate me. It doesn't annoy me, because I live around people like that, and I
Hmm.
talk to people like that, and I don't find them insufferable just because they're talking in slang. But no, it's because when he's explaining something and thinks he's explaining it well,
Yeah.
that he actually is just talking gibberish, or he's
Yeah.
using it's all half sentences
Just
and
word salad.
word salad, because it is literally just words. At least
Yeah.
someone who's like talking jive on the street, I can
Yeah.
understand them.
You
I
go on
know
some
where
of
they're
those things.
coming
Yeah.
from. I know
Uh
what
huh.
they're saying. And I can talk in my, white boy way, and they don't complain or get annoyed at me,
Hmm.
because let's see, as you put it, we're in the same like language family group.
Sure.
But his language is just in another continent.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, the understanding of the world, the child brain of like one Jewish person, a few Jewish people, people wronged me, but I'm going to pick the ones who are Jewish because that's something I can notice,
I know.
as a part to class or anything else.
Right.
He can't notice that because he's a billionaire, he's won the game, and he can't hate on the game because he's a winner, but he's not happy. Why isn't he happy? It's not because he's not wealthy enough, right? He is wealthy enough, but people don't treat him like he's wealthy, right? That's one of the things he complains about. That people don't call him or introduce him as a billionaire. Maybe is it because he's
Yeah.
like he wears a hoodie and he looks like trash half the time,
Yeah.
or he looks like literally someone who's a vagabond on the street that I pass by who's
Hmm.
busking, like
Right.
on the Drink Champs podcast. He looks homely.
He
Um,
does. Yeah. But yeah. I
not
mean.
not taking care of himself, and I guess he doesn't have servants or anyone because he's Mister I do everything myself. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know what his home life is, but I guess he doesn't really have assistants or anything, or he does, but they're all like complete sycophants. That's the
Oh, I'm
word
sure.
being used.
Yeah.
But or I mean, they're not gonna, they're yes men because they're paid by him, right?
Right. Right. Right.
But he doesn't have any friends. He has no family. He has nobody. He's completely alone. So obviously he's gone insane. So he's a victim of the system as much as anyone. But he's won the game. So
Right.
I'm not feeling sorry for him. He's
Oh
won the
no.
game,
Me either.
and I think if there's just what's more infuriating, I suppose, is all of the interviews he's done relate like to respond, or maybe these are the only ones he's taken, but the interviews have always just been like they can never actually explain what's wrong with being anti-Semitic, just saying that it's wrong.
Mhm.
And of course, that's just feeding the fire of reactionary thinking, whether it's someone who's rich or not. If you can't actually explain why it's wrong,
Why it's wrong.
like Chris Como was doing a terrible job, any other podcast he's on do a terrible job, because they are just as ignorant as he is on the Jewish conspiracy, just saying it's old hat, it's Nazi, but like I can't be Nazi because I'm a liberal, and I can't be anti-Semitic because I'm Jewish, because I just say I am. So anyway, but that got me thinking, because actually the only area of the grand conspiracy that I'm familiar about, the Black Israelites, I'm familiar, but what I'm not familiar with is actually the kind of mythology behind saying you're one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Many groups do, and I found a video that goes through some of them and explains where the thing comes from, by looking not only at the Bible, which of course is, as you may know, is not really a reliable source, but also the archaeology around it. So that's the first link that the second link that I put down.
All right, we'll bring it up right now.
So I think that's there's also a 10-minute thing of like Jewish history in 18 minutes or something, but that's only if you want to do that one, which I haven't linked to yet. But
sure. But we'll start here.
I watched it after I watched this one, which was actually a little new information for me. So skip a minute ahead after the
sponsoring this video.
Mr. Nord. Oh no!
Years later, the Assyrian Jacob between Genesis 20.
Sorry, there you go.
About these tribes and what happened to them. From nearly the beginning of the Hebrew Bible's vision of history, the 12 tribes are the most common and most consistent definition of who the people of Israel are. 12 sons are born to the patriarch Jacob between Genesis 29.
Which, by the way, in my Jewish education and in my Jewish, let me begin with, in my Jewish education and Jewish life, the 12 tribes were pretty meaningless. They don't matter at all. They're just a where we get names, basically.
Sure.
The 12 strong names, and 12 is, a strong number. 12 apostles, 12 labors, 12 name something there's 12 of.
Yeah.
Baker's 12.
Isn't there something in the Kabbalah about the number 12 too? Like, doesn't that correspond to like the tree of life or something like that?
A lot of things are 12. I mean, 12 leaves on this branch.
Sure.
Whatever. Or 7 is the other important number, but that depends on the mythology you're using. But as far as my education, I'm talking about Jewish life in modern Jewry. The 12 tribes are meaningless. I don't know if anyone cares. Maybe Hasidim care. But yeah.
Mostly just backdrop and documentation of history. That sort of thing.
In the book, they travel down to Egypt. 400 years later, 12 tribes follow Moses out in a grand exodus. They conquer Canaan and divide the land into 12 different parts. Then they're led by the judges, then by kings David and Solomon, and at that point, according to 1 Kings chapter 11, the kingdom of Israel splits in two. But even this division is described explicitly in tribal terms. 10 of the tribes form the northern kingdom, which keeps the name Israel, while the remainder form a new kingdom called Judah. What happens next is disaster. Roughly 200 years later, the Assyrians conquer the kingdom of Israel and take its people into exile, from which they supposedly never return. This event sparks the legend of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. What happened to them? Although the Bible itself barely touches this subject, for thousands of years people have speculated about answers to that question. Did they stay in Assyria or go deeper into Asia? Did they travel to Africa, as some Ethiopians say? Or did they cross into some mystical geography across the legendary river Sambation? In addition to these legends of where the 10 lost tribes might have gone, there are many groups who have claimed to be Israel, almost always claiming to be one or more of the lost tribes. So even now, there are self-proclaimed Israels all over the world, a phenomenon totally unparalleled in the history of any other identity. What's going on here? Let's start with the historical origins of the legend.
Because it's tied with the monotheistic religion of the West, Abrahamic religions, and because it's in the Bible, and the Bible's the most important book. So
Right.
if you're going to tie yourself to, be a fanfic, that you're going to make up a fanfic, it's a Bible. It's really all Bible fanfics, actually, Bible fanfic clubs. And and the other thing that's more sad is when you don't like your origin or you don't know your origin, and you want a cool backstory for yourself.
Yeah.
You say you're a lost tribe of Israel.
Yeah.
And it's been pointed out about Black Israelites that these are particular Black men who, when looking into the abyss of the humiliation of the Black experience in America, humiliation, the tragedy, they run from it. They run and thus run from reality and say, no, actually, we're better than whites. And you get Hotep stuff. And you get, no, we've actually always been in charge. We've always been in control. We're actually the best. We're a lost tribe of Israel. We, like, all of this white man's history is actually our history. And there was an example of this that kind of peeved me, or just like kind of weed me out, was I went to a talk at the African American Cultural Center, and it was a talk about the Moors in American European history or something.
Mm.
And the speaker kept using the Moors, and I'm like, she was not using it the way I thought she was gonna like. She's When I hear Moor, I think of South Northwest Africans,
Right.
Berber tribes, and perhaps even the Spanish Caliphate, in the Iberian Peninsula. You can call them the Moors as well.
Sure.
Tuareg and Moroccans. But no, she was using them to refer to basically all North Africans, any type of North African, including West Africans, and basically saying that any Black reference or depiction of a Black person in a European art at any time period is a Moor.
Hmm.
And she was using all these slides to make this case, or rather, I couldn't really tell what was her case, and this is what was bothering me.
What
Like,
she's
she
getting.
didn't. What was her thesis? From what I could tell from the beginning, her intro, was that Black people were a driver in European culture,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that, like, well, yeah, they're involved and they have effects, because all cultures are interrelated, of course. The Mediterranean was not a barrier, it was a thing that linked all the people together. But she seemed to have a tone that actually, no, actually, Black people were really fucking important to Europeans. In fact, maybe like they were in every important. It's like writing them into history. Like, every important thing in Europe, actually, Black people were there,
Uh,
involved, because, like, we have to be just as important. Because if we're not as important historically in the development of Europe, then we can't argue for equality now or something like that nature.
hmm.
It was just
Hmm.
weird, to
Yeah.
me. And what was the other thing that struck me?
I mean, it sounds like the inverse of the ancient aliens theory that black people couldn't have created all these wondrous, monuments to the gods and stuff like that. It must have been aliens. It
Oh,
sounds
no,
like
no,
it's
that
basically
white
that in
people
reverse.
white people didn't do anything good. It was actually all blacks. It was all
Yeah, yeah, right.
Africans.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like
Without
the inverse
Carthage,
of that one.
it's like Carthage. Roman success is actually, like, built on Carthage's success,
Uh-huh.
which can be argued, but she wasn't doing that in this lecture. She was
Right.
just showing
No, no, I
slides
understand.
of Black people being depicted in art in Holland and Germany and whatever, and just kind of going extrapolating. So yes, it was like ancient aliens of a type, and
In
it was
reverse, though.
all for, yeah, in reverse, but for a narrative of Black empowerment. And it was like, this is
Hmm.
terrible, because you're basing your historical empowerment not on a full understanding that, like, trade between North Africa and Europe was very important. Was
Hmm.
like, there's all kinds of cool stuff and stories there, but actually, kind of like, you're actually missing all of that to focus on the trees, so to speak. What does James say? Dan is saying Black PC. I think it's called non-white. Seriously though, people are stupid. But people are people, and people need to quit dissing people because they are all. Um, Yes, yeah, I know. To be accurate, black means is a political category, right? Where
Oh,
see that
absolutely.
the Son explains it every day on his stream. Black
Yeah.
and white are political categories.
Right.
So North African is a more geographic. To talk of North Africans are
Sure.
as much a part of the European. There's not much of a separation. The Mediterranean links them together. Same with the quote unquote Middle East. Um, these aren't different continents. It's I think in the actual academic history, you talk of a not a pan Europe, yeah, I guess pan Europeanism, which is that you have when you say Europe, you're actually including Turkey, the Levant, North Africa, everything up until you actually get to natural barriers
Mm,
like the Sahara, the mountains in Iran, and the Caucasus and the steppes.
sure.
Everything in that area, that's all actually one big culture.
Mm,
Um, and it's racist to basically divide them up into little, saying,
right.
there's this European civilization and then there's this North African civilization.
Right.
They are intertwined,
Very, very
more or
interconnected.
less.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and that's where the Orientalism comes in.
Mm,
So yeah. So let's continue. God damn it.
sure. No problem.
Are the 12 tribes of Israel even historical in the first place? Well, historians debate this question. The evidence suggests early on there were some number of tribes of some sort, but the exact number of tribes and what the tribes were actually called differs depending on which biblical text you read. For example, Deuteronomy 33, an early text called the Blessing of Moses, claims to bless all the tribes of Israel, but leaves out the tribe of Simeon. The most striking example, though, is Judges
Fuck
chapter
them.
5, or the Song of Deborah, which many scholars believe is the oldest text in the entire Hebrew Bible. This chapter describes a war between the king
Okay.
of Canaan and many
I'm not liking how he keeps using the phrase Hebrew Bible. It's the Torah.
As though it's sure.
There's a Hebrew Bible and then there's the Christian Bible.
Yeah, I don't know.
The two different Bibles here. No,
Maybe
Torah.
maybe
the
it's just
Bible.
to make it more understandable to
To
a more
a
waspier
WASP
audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what is this Torah? I haven't heard of it.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, it's an annoying thing because I've been hearing it my whole life of mass media using the phrase Hebrew Bible, and it's just like, let's see, how can we turn this around? What's a WASP thing where it's just a different version of your pancake is a English tortilla or something.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
of the tribes mentioned by name. However, only 10 tribes are mentioned, including a few not mentioned as tribes elsewhere in the Bible, like the tribe of Gilead. Moreover, Judges 5 is specifically missing the tribes most often associated with the kingdom of Judah. Levi, Simeon, and well, the tribe of Judah itself. Judah is not mentioned in our earliest source. This is important because the vast majority of descriptions of a specifically 12 tribe Israel were not composed in the northern kingdom at all, but in the southern kingdom of Judah. See, after Assyria conquered the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah survived another 136 years until Babylon conquered them in 586. Here, there's another exile, but not an endless one. After the Persians conquer the Babylonians, the Judahites are allowed to return home and rebuild their lives. In time, the descendants will become the Jewish people. And it was during this time, from 722 to after the Babylonian exile, that much of what we know as the Hebrew Bible was composed and edited by the people of Judah. So many
Can you pause
scholars
it
now
again?
believe that the 12 tribes.
So I just want to give the background information because he doesn't go into it. So when a people are exiled by a conquering force, it's code for taking the rich, educated people and incorporating them into your state.
Hmm.
And all of the working people, peasantry, stay where they are or you massacre them, which means they're lost to history. It's not, or they become refugees and thus they move somewhere else,
Sure.
which is how you get the sea peoples. These are These were refugees moving around. Um, and this was all in a similar time period, though. He mentioned 130-year gap. This was all between the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Classical Age, so to speak. But where you have successive or Indo-Iranian empires that each become a little bigger than the next until you get to the Persians. Yeah. And then the Hellenistic Empire, which for a short time was all of it and more, but then breaks up.
Gotcha.
Tribe's vision itself is an idealized vision of a pan-Israel identity, an identity created by Judah to include them and raise their profile in Israel's history. This narrative is not completely historical, but it was based on an older, smaller tribal system that actually did exist in early Israel. In fact, some scholars question whether the early Judahites even initially thought of themselves as Israelites at all, or whether later Judahites adopted and adapted an Israelite identity. Inventing an idealized 12-tribe system might have played a crucial part in forming this identity. At the same time, many scholars believe that there really were 12 tribes of Israel early on, which remained important throughout the history of both kingdoms. So the scholarly debate does
For all
continue.
we knew, there weren't.
As for the
For all we know, there was, it's all made up. But
Yeah.
what he's getting at is that at the end of the day, this is a type of propaganda. The Torah, especially the first few books, so again, there was 2 exiles. But in this case, we remember the history that's remembered is the history that was written. And in this case, the history that was written by the exiles from Judah who went to Babylon, not Neviah, in Assyria. They, they saved stuff from the oral history, and he goes into it, I guess, a little, but really, the Torah is made up of their oral history, their genealogy, which is the records of the families, and their stories, which include a liberation story, because when you're allowed to go back home, that's the type of liberation, and it took 40 years. So the story of Exodus is really kind of a fan fiction / retelling of the experience of the wealthy, noble Judeans being exiled and then returning home and free at last. This whole the fact that he was kind of telling the Torah's version of they went out of Egypt and conquered Canaan. This does not match the archaeology. The archaeology says that Israelites, the original 12 tribes, were the peasant class of Canaan. And after various... Oh, you haven't heard this? After various catastrophes, like the end of the Bronze Age, you basically have the peasantry rising up against the nobility in Canaan and burning down the cities and going back to the land, running for the hills, starting, going... They went anarcho-primitivism, and in the hills they found new settlements like Jerusalem, and their culture kind of splits off because the first Hebrew is just evolved from Canaanite, Phoenician, and so on. And so a lot of the Torah is making up your own history from something that was really kind of happenstance, and we had a really few bad years, and there was a revolt against our masters, and we freed ourselves, and that becomes the liberation story. Because to jiv it up, it's like no, we didn't actually rebel against our Canaanite noble with an army of 50. We actually rebelled against Egypt with their army of thousands, and it's a better story that way, I guess. It's bigger. You're rebelling against the biggest king, the biggest empire of the land, Egypt. Yeah. At least of the late Bronze Age, right? Because we're talking late Bronze Age Egypt, not later.
Gotcha.
The famous legend of the 10 lost tribes, well, the answer is less complicated. It is true that the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom in 722, and that many of the Israelites were taken into exile at that time. This actual historical event inspired the 10 Lost Tribes legend. However, in recent years, we've realized that 2 Kings chapter 17, the text in the Bible that describes this event in detail, vastly exaggerates how many Israelites were actually removed from the region. In this text, we're told that all the Israelites were taken and replaced by foreign peoples brought in by the Assyrians. In reality, archaeological evidence demonstrates
first
that many
great
Israelites
replacement.
remained behind.
They got replaced. This time the Jews were replaced.
Uh-huh.
They weren't Jews yet, though. That's the important thing.
For sure.
Because the monotheism kind of occurs kind of after, but that's also kind of how monotheism comes about. That it's a rejection of all the Canaanite gods, your rulers' gods, and settling on kind of a base 3, and then there was kind of a civil war between the different cults for each god, and Yahweh, which was the war god, won. So you had a culture that was dominated by the cult of the war god, and thus you have a god that loves bloody sacrifice, and all the stories are about conquering and being war and fighting wars, and so on.
Oh yeah.
Imagine how differently history might have been if it was the fertility goddess,
right?
It was the original monotheistic mother goddess instead. But that's why there's. I think you can guess why the war god cult won the Civil War.
Yeah. I guess
They wanted it more. They were ready to go. At least that is. I don't know if that's not truly completely substantiated. I think that's one of the theories when it comes to the development of by the first two kingdoms, Israel and Judah, or the David's, But I think it was a Nova special about the kingdom of David. Did it really exist? Was David and Solomon, were they real people? Yeah. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But I think the conclusion, and when you look at the archaeology, it's like, well, the kingdom of David was just this backwater compared to the other civilizations of the day. The David's palace just would have been a 2,000 square foot courtyard house, or the temple on the mount was a very simple house. Oh, and I think later on he mispronounces bait, the Hebrew word for house, and he just says it in such a white fashion. It bothers me.
Interesting. I'll have to look out for that.
Yeah.
Behind, and likely went on living their lives much as they had before, even though the Assyrians now ruled the region. Many also likely fled south and integrated into the kingdom of Judah. So it's not entirely accurate to think of these deportations as the wholesale removal of the entire local population. The Assyrian Empire's deportation and resettlement policy was very targeted. When Assyrian sources mention who is being deported, they specifically mention the artisans, scholars, and urban elite. As the Assyriologist Karen Radner says, these people were usually dispatched to the Assyrian heartland to generate knowledge and wealth. In other words, the policy was a knowledge industry extraction program, extracting the elite from conquered lands and transplanting them into the imperial center where they were best able to generate wealth for the empire. And this was a well-organized policy by the Assyrian bureaucracy. So all this to say, there were tens of thousands of lost Israelites, but there were never really 10 lost tribes. The Israelites that were lost were likely a cross-section of the urban elite and artisans who ended up in the Assyrian heartland, in what is now northern Iraq. But here it's again useful to remember the role that the kingdom of Judah played in creating the Bible as we know it. 2 Kings 17 is likely a Judahite effort to downplay the legitimacy of the remaining Israelites of the northern kingdom. So this famous legend may actually be based in an ancient rivalry between competing factions, rather than an uncomplicated recounting of history. But the Bible itself is not very descriptive about this issue. In fact, 2 Kings 17 never even says how many tribes of Israel were lost. In the end, the legend of the 10 lost tribes was a later invention. a creation of early Jewish and Christian authors who exaggerated the exiled Israelites as a vast multitude, and who speculated about what really happened to them. So let's examine those later speculations, because when you ask the question, what happened to the 10 lost tribes, many people to this day have very specific answers, even claiming to be descendants of one or more of those tribes. Why did the legend of the 10 lost tribes become such a big deal for so many people later in history? A new book by the Hebrew Bible scholar Dr. Andrew Tobolowsky ties all this together by offering a new perspective on the history of what he calls becoming Israel, the practice of claiming and constructing new identities by adapting the 12 tribes tradition. The book, The Myth of the 12 Tribes of Israel, explores this history through a series of case studies, beginning with the Hebrew Bible itself and continuing through discussions of the Samaritans, medieval lost tribe legends, the Mormons, and the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, though there are many other groups that we could talk about, including the Black Hebrew Israelites and followers of
You have something you want to interject there?
Yeah, so he says it like beta. It sounds like beta.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
It's baked, like
Baked.
no, like B. Obviously, it's not a Latinized word, but it's hard to Latinize.
Yeah.
But it's BAIT, bait.
Baked.
So it's house. It's house in Hebrew.
Okay.
So instead of actually, I actually sorry, it is. I can explain succinctly why it annoys me, because you should just be saying House of Israel, or but he's using, I guess maybe he's using their name, and they impose that it's like no, we're not just a House of Israel, we're the Beit to Israel, because we're authentic, but like we're using the Hebrew transliteration, but
Sure.
it's like a wasp trying to sound French in a Parisian cafe, and misordering or whatever. Or when my father would no, wait, it's not. It's a jalapeno popper,
The jalapeno poppers.
Jalapeno pop. Yeah, there you go. And
Some fajitas.
yeah, right. And my parents, whatever.
That's funny.
So just say House of Israel if you're speaking
House of
English.
Israel. All right.
If you're going to speak Hebrew, then yes, Beit days, Beit al Israel,
Okay.
But you're not
Good to know.
speaking Hebrew.
Thanks for the.
You're not speaking Hebrew. You didn't learn Hebrew. You're low
Right.
effort. Get the hell out of my shul. You're not a Jew. You are not Jew. You want to be Jew because that makes you important, and that's what this is kind of leading to. That to be one of the 12 tribes of Israel makes you important. It makes you important. You're chosen. Everyone wants to be special, right? And the fact that there are these 10, if you misread the Torah, 10 lost tribes. Well, maybe I'm one of the lost tribes. It's
Maybe I'm a lost tribe.
It's all fantasy and
Yeah.
and not too dissimilar to like I could be an Indian princess.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. It sounds a lot like hippies that have to claim 1/12 Cherokee on their distant cousin side.
Anything to not be white, which is a
Right.
noble goal to not be white. But if
Sure.
you're going to say I'm not that political category, then you need to also give up the privileges and oppose the privileges of whiteness, which
Yeah.
saying you're a lost tribe does not frickin' do,
Right.
to my knowledge and my experience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if anything, it's the opposite. You're trying to claim something above and
Yeah.
beyond.
That you're still special. And
Yeah.
and yeah, because you still want to be special, but you don't want to be special because you're white and part of the political class. The
Sure.
top half, they're politically in charge.
Right.
British Israelism. This is a groundbreaking book because it not only ventures into a topic dominated by conspiracy theorists instead of critical scholarship, but it also is an extensive comparative study that spans thousands of years of history. His argument starts with this simple fact. The Hebrew Bible's vision of a tribal Israel is a Judahite vision. Though historians debate how much of the 12 tribes tradition is historical, there's no debate that the tradition itself was shaped in Judah after the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom. This means that the Bible's vision of Israel was shaped after the heyday of the tribes of Israel, whatever that originally looked like. In other words, the first group of people to use the 12 tribes tradition to shape an Israelite identity was Judah, and the way Judah used the tradition is not all that different from how other groups used the tradition throughout history. So let's go through some of those other examples in
That's why
Tobolowski's
there's
book,
12
starting
of
with the
them.
people.
It
Yeah.
might, in reality, it might have just been 4,
Sure,
but
yeah, you
12
never
is a great number.
It is.
So
yeah.
You have 12.
You never know. They could have gone in the 12 directions of the compass, and
It scans better.
scattered to the winds. Yeah.
Known as the Samaritans, also known as the Samaritan Israelites. The Samaritans are a religious group numbering about 1,000 people living in 2 main places, the town of Holon on the outskirts of Tel Aviv and near their holy site Mount Gerizim in the Palestinian territory of the West Bank. It was long believed that the Samaritans descended from foreigners brought into Israel by the Assyrians after their conquest. This idea comes from 2 Kings 17, which we mentioned before. It claims that the region was resettled by colonists who were eventually taught to worship God, but their foreign influence corrupted how they worshipped him. The Samaritans themselves have always claimed otherwise, saying they are the direct descendants of Israel, but their vision of Israel's history differs from that of Judaism.
That's a
The
common
Samaritans
theme
also-
of Jewish history. One faction saying that another is worshiping God wrong. Thank goodness we don't do that today.
Yeah.
Now we just
Well, I mean-
say you're anti-Semitic because you don't support the interpretation that God gave us Palestine,
Sure. Or don't support the
Which is their
state of
way.
Israel.
which is their way of saying. But it was interesting. Chapo was talking about this, how the real kind of one division of Jews, or to say like the good Jews versus bad Jews, and this is Ben Shapiro plays into this greatly, is that good Jews are religious Jews, and these are also the richer Jews, the ones that are like in Wall Street and whatever, and influential, at least in the right wing. And 13 is the unlucky number, Zach.
I mean,
13 is unlucky.
there's a big conspiracy behind all that, though. It's because
And-
there's 13 moons in a lunar calendar. So
And that's the Jewish
Yeah.
calendar, by the way.
yeah.
So, so really, 13 is actually whatever. What the fuck was I on about?
Maybe there's really 13 lost tribes.
What the fuck
Let's just
was
keep
I on
adding
about
more.
now? What was I on about?
I'm
I've
sorry,
lost- I've lost-
I totally
I lost-
derailed.
I lost the plot. Doesn't
Let's
matter.
Get back on track.
Oh
worship
yeah.
one
That us secular Jews are the ones that are in the conspiracy side. We're
Oh,
the bad
yes.
Jews. We're
bad
secular.
Jews,
We
right.
worship the devil. We've been
Yeah.
corrupted. We're not worshiping God right, and that goes all the way back, all the way. It's part of Jewish history is the struggle between secular Jews that want to assimilate, integrate, be a part of cosmopolitan civilization, because we're at the crossroads in Levant, and a living in the hills, pious, theocratic Judaism, which in Jewish history has won actually more times than not, and that's sort of how like we stay separated long term, is that we're pious, we stick to the rules, we have the Torah, and that's what makes us Jews, not where we live, not who our neighbors are. We don't integrate, we don't have to, because we are chosen, we know who we are regardless of anything. But then you have what may be practical or materialistic of like, no, I want to be successful, I want to be normal, I want to not get my house burned down. And since we're not politically ostracized by skin color or anything like that, but only by religion in Renaissance Europe, and then this goes in the Enlightenment too. You always had Jews that were court Jews that were wealthy, they served the powerful, but they were more secular. Thus, they probably still went to temple and they still had an education, in the traditions, but they were And so so it goes, and this goes all the way back to what the Hanukkah is about, which was a war between pious Jews and the Jews that want to be Hellenistic, and thus sided with the Hellenistic kingdom.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's a Hanukkah story, but the theocrats won, and they because the Greek kingdoms were, not well managed. um, the Seleucid dynasty was too busy infighting to properly put down the Maccabee rebellion. So it was a miracle, and we celebrate that miracle by eating oily food. Um, but I, for one, would have preferred if the Hellenistic Jews won, the because but what would that mean long term? Probably nothing. It all
Yeah,
became Roman vassalage eventually.
true
But
enough.
the victories of the pious meant that there was this pious identity that we are servants of God, we're the chosen, we're more important, and we don't bend. We don't bend or break. We keep on, and even in the diaspora, we have the Torah and the Talmud, which was written because of the diaspora, to take everything that was orally and tied to the place of Palestine could now travel with us, and thus we could stay in identifiable communities that could then talk to each other over vast distances and have trade networks. Because when you're in a refugee community, you go into merchant business. That's you know, in the general sense of when you're a outlier of society, you go into the industries that you're allowed to go in, and that means we're concentrated in certain types of work. And that's how we get really good at certain types of work and get the stereotypes of businessmen and whatever not being good at tools, because the guilds weren't letting us in.
Oh yeah. All right. Let's move on.
God, but they believe Mount Gerizim is God's holy site rather than Jerusalem. They also have a Pentateuch, but it's a different version than the Pentateuch found in the Hebrew Bible. In recent years, historians have realized that their
I
claim
don't know
of
what the
Israelite
Pentateuch
ancestry is correct. They actually do descend from ancient Israelites themselves, the ones who were never exiled from the northern kingdom. Thus, the account in 2 Kings 17 now appears to be an anti-Samaritan passage that aimed to delegitimize the Samaritans' claim to Israelite identity. What this means is that even in the ancient world, and even outside of the Hebrew Bible, there were different groups with a legitimate claim to Israelite ancestry, different groups that were already using the same 12 tribes tradition to construct different visions of Israel, sometimes even in opposition to each other, as what we see when we compare the Samaritan Pentateuch with the Hebrew Bible's Pentateuch. In other words, as I say in another video, the Samaritan Israelites don't so much tell a different history of Israel as they tell a counter history of Israel, a story with all the same elements but arranged in a way that counters the Judahite narrative of the Hebrew Bible and constructs their own vision of Israelite identity. Our next case study examines medieval legends linked to the mythical king Prester John. Prester John was thought to be a priest king of the East with a supposedly mighty army that would one day rescue the European Crusaders. The medieval text called the Letter of Prester John says that the lost tribes live on his border, and part of his role is to control and contain them unless they break through his defenses and destroy the world, a legend that reflects varieties of medieval anti-Semitism. Tobolowsky argues that these medieval legends became a framework for how Europeans understood the world and the other societies they came into contact with. Anytime Europeans encountered a new people, they asked the same question: which biblical people group is this? The lost tribes were a common answer to fill in that blank, but there were others. Europeans also like to look to the family of nations passage in Genesis chapter 10.
So this is a case of how stupid Europeans are, that they basically make up a story. It's fiction. It's like a little novel, but they take it. Its readers, I guess, are a little too literal minded. They didn't have any literature education, I guess, and they take it seriously, and they take it literally. So it's like they're going around looking for the kingdom of Prester John, or more to the reality, people from Ethiopia would come to Europe, and they would say, "Oh, you're from the kingdom of Prester John, aren't you?" And they'll go like, "No, we're from our kingdom, at the headwaters of the Nile, yeah, but we're actually coming to ask you for help." Because the caliphate in Egypt is attacking us too, and they would try to form a alliance with European kingdoms, but never really worked out because you send an embassy, and the Ethiopians are like, "What? These people think we're like not the people we say we are." They keep calling us the kingdom of Prester John or whatever, and it's like, well, these Europeans are crazy. But also it just wouldn't work out because of the barriers, when you got Egypt between you, Saladin there, But yeah, this is like post Crusades or during the Crusades.
Sure. Okay.
There's a lot of good history videos that explore the Prester John and and black, or rather, it's not in this case black, but Central African and African um, diplomatic ties in Europe.
Cool.
which describes the whole world as the descendants of Noah's 3 sons. We see this framework in action when the Europeans first encountered the Mongols in the 13th century. First, Europeans theorized that, at last, the armies of Prester John have arrived to help us with the Crusades. But as the Mongols appeared more threatening, it became more common to imagine that they were instead the lost tribes of Israel, here to bring about the end of the world. These myths also popped up in the stories of individual explorers during this period. Eldad Ha-Dani was a Jewish merchant and traveler who arrived in North Africa in the late 9th century, claiming to come from the lost tribe of Dan. Benjamin of Tudela was a Jewish traveler from Spain who went east and returned with stories of the mighty free Israelites of Asia. All this searching and finding of the lost 10 tribes laid the groundwork for the next phase in the search for Israel, the exploration of the New World. Almost from the time of Columbus himself, many people believed that the indigenous people of the Americas were the lost tribes of Israel, a belief that blossomed into something often called the Jewish Indian.
On the note of European fiction writing, and this goes all the way back to Roman and classical times, that in Herodotus even, that you would have people who would write travelogues. Travelogues were like a very popular form of literature, where it's like I traveled to a place and I had an adventure, and it's basically all made up, but people would, or because to make it to sell better, sell the story better, the writer would say it really happened, that they actually, it's a travelogue, I really traveled here, but they were completely making things up, that India was populated by werewolves, other things, or dog people, which is in Herodotus. And basically anything that kind of went a little bit farther beyond the scope of where they could get reliable sources, or what have you. We're talking about actual, inner Asia, India. Even though India and Rome had really, really tight trade contact, actually. It's pretty funny. I was just watching a video about how much like Roman gold was in Sri Lanka. Particularly South India, South
Sri Lanka of all places. Wow.
Wait, am I saying Sri Lanka? The island.
Yeah. No. I was just amazed that it got that far.
In South End. Well, it was particularly the kingdom in the lower triangle of India.
Sure.
Because the trade was going from there using the monsoon winds. And
Oh,
up
okay.
the Gulf of
That makes
Aden,
sense.
up to Egypt, and then getting portaged over to the Nile. And because the Romans had just briefly, for like 2 years, they actually put up a fort at one of the islands in Yemen, like on the coast of Yemen. There was a little fort there. It was so brief because they couldn't afford it, but they put a garrison there to kind of watch the trade route, because they were getting a lot of stuff through there.
Interesting. That's cool.
Theory, or the Hebraic Indian theory, which is preferred by some scholars. Even some of the founders of the U.S. bought into this theory, such as Benjamin Rush, a famous patriot and doctor who asked Lewis and Clark to keep an eye out for evidence on their expedition out west. The most famous expression of the Jewish Indian theory is the Book of Mormon, which tells the story of how a group out of the tribe of Manasseh made their way to America around the time of the Babylonian conquest, and became some or all of the native peoples. At first, the Mormons broadly understood themselves as Gentiles discovering and converting the lost of Israel, but very quickly Mormon theology landed on the position that they themselves were in fact Israelites, and that those predisposed to convert to this new belief system probably had Israelite ancestry themselves. Even today, an important coming-of-age ceremony called the patriarchal blessing typically involves revealing to the blessed what tribe they descend from. According to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, many members specifically descend from the tribe of Ephraim. The final case study examines the Jewish community of Ethiopia, called the Beta Israel. There are about 170,000 Ethiopian Jews, the vast majority of whom live in Israel, and the story of their immigration from Ethiopia to Israel is, in a sense, a story of the 12 tribes tradition, enabling them to become Israel twice.
Man.
First, building an Israelite identity in Ethiopia, and then centuries later being recognized by the state of Israel in the 20th century. For hundreds of years, legends have been told in Ethiopia about the descendants of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, a mysterious monarch long associated with Ethiopia who visits King Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 10. Ethiopians later expanded on the source text. The most extensive expansion is found in the text called the Kebra Nagast. In this legend, Solomon and the Queen of Sheba have a son named Menelik, who, after visiting his father in Israel, returns home with an honor guard of Israelite Israelite tribal leaders and the Ark of the Covenant. In the 13th century, a local Ethiopian ruler named Yakuno Amlak overthrew the rival Zagwe kingdom and formed a new dynasty that came to be known as the Solomonic dynasty, which ruled Ethiopia until the overthrow of the last emperor in 1974. As the name suggests, the Solomonic dynasty claimed to descend from Menelik, and as a result, many Ethiopian Christians have identified as Israelites for a long time. The Beta Israel community, likely from around the time of its inception in the 14th century CE, understood themselves as Israelites too according to the Kebros tradition, but distinct from these Christian Israelites by virtue of the fact that they held to their pre-Christian Jewish roots. Their claim to Israelite identity got even stronger in the 19th century, when Jewish travelers entered the region searching for the lost tribes of Israel, courtesy of Eldad Hadani, the same medieval traveler we discussed before. See, Eldad not only identified himself as a member of the lost tribe of Dan, but he claimed that these Danites lived in a land called Cush, a biblical place name that had long been associated with Ethiopia. So when these Jewish travelers entered Ethiopia, they encountered...
They went with the weed spelling instead.
Yeah, I guess I guess that's just Latinizing words, but
you
can do it different ways. But whenever I see it, it's usually spelled as K with a K.
Okay, sure.
Jewish Israelites precisely where they thought they would find them, and came to believe that they discovered the lost tribe of Dan.
Which, by the way,
this is significant.
Cush is just Sudan. Cush is just Sudan. It's
just Sudan.
It's just.
All right.
It's not a city. I guess it's a city, but I mean, it's not a magical place. It's just Sudan. It's
Gotcha.
Cushite is what you call old name for Sudanese.
Okay.
Because it was this identification as the tribe of Dan enabled the Beta Israel to be recognized by the Rabbinic Court of Israel in the 1970s. This shows the flexibility of the 12 tribes tradition. As Tobolowsky argues in his book, the tradition in Ethiopia was initially a native tradition focused on internal Ethiopian politics and society, especially regarding the foundation of the Solomonic dynasty. But in the 20th century, the 12 tribes tradition enabled the Beta Israel to reorient themselves to a vision of Israel recognized by people outside of Ethiopia, recognized by the external world of Judaism as well. This shift cleared the way for their move from Ethiopia to the state of Israel.
They're also
the
black, majority... so Israel kind of doesn't treat them very well.
Yeah,
they kind of have third-class status as immigrants, or actually the worst of it. There's pogroms of European Israelites against the the actual black Israelites. But again, it's because they got recognition. They're able to emigrate or whatever.
Yeah,
but again, okay. So he's spelling it beta. It's beta, meaning bait, ta, meaning of. It's house of Israel.
Gotcha.
It's two. He's combining two different words together, and yeah, it is weird. I don't like it.
of the community now live. So as we've seen, depending on who you ask, you get a lot of different answers to the question, what happened to the 10 lost tribes? In fact, many of these people adopted and adapted an Israelite identity by claiming to be one or more of the tribes of Israel, whether it's the tribe of Ephraim or the tribe of Dan or others. The Hebrew Bible helps these claims seem more plausible because the Bible is silent about the destiny of the vast majority of these tribes. Since the source material simply does not say what happened to them, this leaves the door open to finding them anywhere in almost any form.
But
the tribal tradition itself makes this even more possible by offering at least 12 different options to claim to be Israel. Which leads us to Tobolowsky's research on genealogies. Now, I know what you're thinking. Genealogies are some of the most boring sections of the Bible to read. If you've read the Hebrew Bible, you know what I'm talking about. Huge walls of text that list father to son or mother to daughter for page after page after page. Scholars call this a
you know why he's saying Hebrew
genealogy,
Bible?
because if you draw it, it would look something like...
Because he's literally like the book he's showing is like a King James Bible.
Oh, okay.
And it's like includes the Torah in a way. It's the King James translation of it.
Right. Yeah.
Which is also politically driven, politically motivated, and so that's why it's like there's the Hebrew Bible, the Hebrew portion of the Bible, and then there's the actual Bible of Jesus. But they're usually combined. So yeah, that's why.
Okay, that makes sense.
A straight line. Abraham begot Isaac, Isaac begot Jacob, and so forth. But there's another type of genealogy very important to Tobolowsky's argument, what he calls a segmented genealogy. What does he mean by that? Well, especially in the book of Genesis, biblical authors will describe entire family trees. In Genesis chapter 10, for example, we get an account of the descent of all of humanity from the 3 sons of Noah. Each of these lines are segments of the overall genealogy.
Sounds
Tobolowsky
legit.
points out that the segmented structure of the 12 tribes tradition makes it possible to adopt an Israelite identity in so many different places and times. Because Israel was born divided into 12 pieces, it can go on being divided not just between the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, or even Israel and Assyria, but it can be divided across the entire world, from Ethiopia to North America. In other words,
Zach.
separating
You
Israel
see
into
that
parts.
old map?
Yeah.
See how some of those tribes were west of the Jordan River? East of the Jordan River.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan better look out.
Yeah, all right. Gonna claim ancestry that gives them the right to that land.
Well, they pretty much do. That's why they keep the Golan Heights.
Oh, okay. Didn't realize that was part of it.
Israel and
But
Judah,
again,
or even
yeah.
Israel and Assyria, but it can be divided across the entire world, from Ethiopia to North America. In other words, separating Israel into parts not only makes it possible to write a story about Judah becoming the most important tribe, but separating Israel into parts also enables a story about how a group out of the tribe of Manasseh came to America and became a huge people group. While some of these claims to Israelite lineage have more to them historically, in a sense, all of the people groups claiming Israelite identity are doing essentially the same thing, placing themselves on one or some of the branches of the genealogical tree. But all of this would hardly matter if being Israel was not also desirable in the first place. The idea of Israel as God's chosen people, the role its restoration plays in the fulfillment of biblical prophecies, and the prestige and popularity of this ancient people all come together to create a global
popular.
fascination with where the people of Israel is
Israelites
located,
are
what it has
popular.
become.
Dude, Israelites are popular. I know what he means, but like in
Right.
the way I described that, it makes you special if you're one of the chosen people. But you're not like those other Jews. Those are the illegitimate, not correct. You know, they're the
Right.
non-lost ones. But or they left, so or whatever. But it's also like the more annoying thing is also when it's overlaid in a new age fashion with an understanding of evolution, human evolution. Of like we're all Africans, we all come from the Great Rift Valley, as far as human migration goes. But it's like they were right. We are from the same family. It's like, and thus Kanye's kind of has a point. We're all Jews. We're all Jews in a way.
There you go.
Which also means none of us are.
Right.
So shut the fuck
and-
up about it.
What will happen next? The result is a world full of self-proclaimed Israels, an unprecedented phenomenon for any people group in all of history. Thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video.
Britain's Israel. Korea's Israel.
Yep.
New Zealand's Israel. I mean, he showed New Zealand.
Yep.
It's kind of a joke. Yeah, it's I'm Israel. You're New York, Israel. Yeah, it's all great.
Yep.
It's all Israel.
All Israel. As far as the eye can see.
Even Palestine. Palestine can be Israel too.
Could be Israel too. Why? I mean, that's probably a
Never
little bit
thought of it
closer to
that
the
way.
truth. Yeah.
Never thought of it that way, did you? Maybe Palestine. Maybe Palestinians are the 10 lost tribes. They're the ones that stayed.
Yeah.
They weren't. They didn't get, destroyed. But yeah.
Uh-huh.
But it goes to show that, like, everyone's always, human history. Everyone's always moving around. Ethnic groups and people change their
Sure.
culture as they change geography. And but Jewishness, because the specialness comes from the fact that we, maybe because we were kind of trailblazers in monotheism. It's through our particular history that we have our identity is our quote religion or our worship, the Torah and the Talmud, that we could take the word with us, and thus it belonged to us, and it wasn't based on a location, which usually most other religions are, especially from the Bronze Age. You had a patron god in your town, but our God went everywhere, with us, because he is everywhere. But this was a conclusion, like a theological statement that came about after centuries of betching around, and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, so I'll conclude on that side of it. So next up is this
Yes.
this month's edition of What Did We Do Now? Where we leftists talk about what the hell we're doing and how we're fucking up society. And in this case, the latest big lie, I suppose, big lie is repeated, is let's start with the first link, because
All right, here we go.
that includes what's being propagated in the right wing media, but
Hey
also
guys, it's
practically
Angie.
mainstream. Because
Yeah,
because it is mainstream, really. I mean, there's really no division. It's
unfortunately,
because
so yeah,
even the liberal outlets will not either do a good job of, or not even do it at all, of responding, or
right,
or they will respond, but just do it on these pathologically partisan grounds, and not like, but here's the real story, and it's just lies. It's like illegal to say that someone's lying. You have to say they're mistaken, or anyway. This is the story is being repeated, is that some school um, was bullied by a teacher, sorry, a
uh,
parent of a teenager who is doing pet play, or identifies as a
uh-huh,
furry, or as a
mm-hmm,
cat, as her gender, and
right,
because there's 47 genders, one of them being cat,
cat,
and
right,
they put out a kitty litter box for them to use in a bathroom. Uh,
mm-hmm,
I guess the most generous version is that it's actually in a stall, so it's like their stall.
right,
And this is how far it's gone. And this is the thing that's like, once you accept gays and
loony
trans,
left,
it's animals next, right? It's
It's
what's
the yeah,
next?
right. It's
Animals?
Pandora's box.
Bestiality?
Never
And so,
ends.
of course, these things don't actually happen. So they make things up.
Make
They
shit up.
make up the story.
Yeah.
Now, I was originally thinking this is one of two things: completely made up, or it's you have someone a teenager who was doing pet play, or is a furry, and they have a suit and they do the furry stuff, but or they draw their fursona, and they're being made fun of at school, where they, because I'm just imagining bully scenarios that existed maybe only in the past, and maybe anti-bullying campaigns have been effective, and it's just the adults who are reactionary, who are the only bullies left. They're actually, the teens don't really have that much bullying happening. I don't know. But like, I was imagining, like, they put their name on a kitty litter box and put it in the bathroom and said, this is yours. This is the kind
Right.
of way I was bullied as a kid,
Right.
or something of that nature.
Yeah. Well,
And yeah.
I mean, it's funny how it's always like 2 or 3 degrees removed. It's never, my wife works for a school, or I work for a school, and I've seen this happening. It's always, a buddy of mine, his wife's cousin works for a school, and she says this is going
Oh
on
yeah,
at
it
that
really
school.
is. A friend of mine said,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's a friend of theirs who, but their friend is just repeating what the right
what
put out
they heard from somewhere else. So
from the
just
right wing. So, like, if you say
right,
was their source, they will
right,
say the school itself,
uh-huh,
which is just bullshit.
right,
But really, the source is Breitbart,
yeah,
or some right wing outlet,
right.
Betamax, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's
News World, whatever. What's it called?
Newsmax.
Newsmax. Yeah,
Betamax is a better name for it, but yeah,
yeah, Newsmax. And their source is nothing. Their source is
trust me, bro.
trust me. Well, yeah, trust me, bro. But
Yeah.
there was a the woman that the old woman the Mima that I cleaned her house apartment for a year. She's the type of person who would see this shit on Facebook and believe it, completely.
Mhm. Yeah,
No,
hook, line, and sinker.
and she
No,
would
no
say,
critical
"Oh,
thinking.
I'm a critical thinker. I'm
Yeah,
open-minded. I'm this and that. I'm a moderate." But she was so gullible, and
yeah,
I really, and she was definitely like Mr. West, like Mr. X, the Kanye X. Like, she's so open-minded, or rather, she's so convinced and narcissistic of her, even-handedness, that
hmm
she does her research, and
hmm
she makes sure that what she's reading is true, but her
hmm
extra research is just going to other right-wing sources, or
right.
the liberal source that doesn't do a legitimate
Just
job in
right.
presenting the reality, or whatever, or
Yeah, yeah,
what is it, counterfactuals, in opposition to, they don't publish anything that
right,
opposes it, so they don't see
right.
anything opposing it, and so it's like, well, it must be true,
Oh, it must be
and
true
that's
then.
and
Yeah.
that's that's sick. That's wrong. You know, so that's how our conversation would go. Nothing I would say would get through to her, or she would not be listening to me. So eventually, I just stopped wanting to talk to her, and yeah, 'cause it was
Hmm.
too annoying. And I guess there was a little bit in our interaction that like anyone talking to Kanye on TV kind of is that.
Ah,
Um, Talking to someone who totally believes their own, like that they are infallible,
right.
which is
Right.
scary. Which is scary, more scary and funny
Absolutely is.
if you listen to them enough. If it's a short burst, it's funny. It's like a joke. It's like a skit. But then when it's a full hour of them rambling, then it's like, oh, this is this is how they really are. This isn't just like them having a brain fart. This is actually like how they think.
Right.
That's scary.
It is. It is
Um,
to be that
yeah,
delusional. Yeah.
and that it really is like truly normalizing Kanye, normalizing the anti-Semitism, not because he's saying it, but because everyone who interviews him is doing a shit job of opposing it.
Right.
They're just doing the normal liberal thing of it's wrong. It hurts people's feelings. So he thinks he's getting away with it by saying, "I'm sorry you were offended. I'm
Hmm.
sorry I hurt people's feelings." And not recognizing, and Chris Como was like the closest, I guess, to explaining. No, he would just say it's a prejudice to say like
Right.
Jewish businesses because they can't oppose capitalism any more than Kanye can.
That's a good point.
Because you have to say that you're mad at a class dynamic that's happening here. You
Hmm.
can't. You have to make it identitarian, and but that's what he's doing. It's like, but you're using the wrong identity. This isn't, Jew versus Gentile. It's black and white, I guess. But you're
Hmm.
speaking to a black billionaire, so obviously that binary ain't working either. So you got to broaden your intersectionality, my liberal friends, from
That's right.
those identities to class identities. If not, then you're stuck in the loop you're seeing on TV with Kanye West, where no one can
Right.
tell him why he's wrong,
Right.
which is just so. That's what angers me. Not
Yeah.
that he's wrong or crazy,
Just no one will counter him when
that
it's
he
the most
cannot
batshit
that
stuff. Yeah.
on liberal television he cannot be countered.
Right.
And I think the closest person who did was some asshole like um, the Breakfast Club guy, Charlemagne the God.
Oh, Solomon.
He was the closest guy to saying the most legitimate opposition of
Yeah. Hmm.
just like it's bullshit because it's like this. It's like saying that a woman hurt your feelings, or a woman, you know, uh, I forget what he said actually, but he called out why it's bullshit. He did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
In a minute,
Yeah.
in a minute retort. Um, but yeah, it's just so fucking gross. But the whole like, um, but it's like the incels, like a woman hurt my feelings, so now I hate all women, and it
Hmm.
just doesn't help that in basically before the civil rights movement, before 68, it was a common phrase to say I got Jewed out of money.
Oh yeah.
That a Jew, like being Jewish, was synonymous with being a cheapskate or a sneaky
Yeah.
businessman, basically being a good capitalist. Um, because you couldn't talk about class or capitalism in the 50s and 60s,
Right.
because
Had to find another scapegoat.
that was when you had real cultural hegemony.
Hmm.
But or what's it? Yeah, I guess hegemony, but
Yeah.
I
That,
suppose
that fits. Uh-huh.
the conservatism.
Right.
And today we have a type of conservatism, liberal conservatism,
Sure.
of just non-class identities being the first, and you can have intersections with that, but not class.
Right. Never touch that
And to say
class.
you want to overlay class, that's being racist as well.
All right. Let's get into the video here.
Yeah, I don't
Welcome
hate
to Is
players,
This Legit?
James. I hate
Here
the
we
game.
debunk the viral misinformation littered across your social media and teach you ways to fact check on your own. But speaking of litter, take a look at this video that's been circulating on social.
Let's talk about Furies. It was addressed child a couple months ago that they are put in an environment where there are kids that identify as a furry, a cat or a dog, whatever. And so yesterday I heard that at least one of our schools in our town has in one of the unisex bathrooms, a litter box for the kids that identify as cats. And I am really disturbed by that.
Wow, that clip of what appears to be a school board meeting went viral. It's just one of many videos claiming that litter boxes are being put in schools for students who identify as cats. This claim is everywhere. This video claims that parents are suing a school for not providing litter boxes.
And claiming it.
The parents of an Iowa girl are insisting that the school put a litter box in the girl's restroom for their child.
This one includes what looks like an announcement from American University saying that they are providing litter boxes.
Life could be worse. No, not really. This is the worst.
So what's happening here? Time to find out. Is this legit? When you're unsure if something is true, one of the easiest things you can do is turn to a keyword search. I know Google it is kind of a lame media literacy tip, but you'd be surprised by how much misinformation could be avoided if people simply just took the extra 30 seconds before sharing something. Using the phrase litter box in school bathrooms brought up this fact check from USA Today. Now, I'm sure you've heard of USA Today, but here's a bonus tip to use while you're keyword searching, especially if you see an unclear source. Click the three little dots to open an About This result box, and you can see that USA Today is a totally legit source. If you scroll down, you can also see that the link was published recently, which is another good sign. According to the article, the video is of a school board meeting in central Michigan. But Midland Public School Superintendent Michael Sharrow said there's absolutely no truth in the rumors that litter boxes are being provided to students who identify as furries or self-identify as cats. And if you're not familiar with the term furry, Merriam-Webster defines furries as people who identify with and enjoy dressing as an animal, especially as a member of a subculture devoted to the practice.
And that's the thing too, is like furries don't actually believe they are these animals. There's a totally different term for that. I'm not really even sure what it is. But those people are so incredibly rare that there's absolutely no way that
there's in-depth there's in-depth pet play where you will do like you shit like a pet, but that's
like pretending to be a baby or,
special weekend with your dom.
Right, exactly.
Commitment.
Right. And then you go back to your regular life where you don't interact with anyone as, a dog or whatever. So just like doesn't even pass the smell test if you are the least bit familiar with any of this stuff. But
people are not. So it's like,
not. So then,
furries are people who think they're animals. They
No.
they wear tails and mascot outfits, so it's like they're friends, and they're different. And I don't know.
So they must be evil. Yeah.
So I'm gonna listen to what these random people who I guess are normal to me, so I trust them. That they must be being truthful, and they sound convinced, but they could also all be idiots. So let's go on. I want to hear about like the statement from the university.
The USA Today article links to an email from the superintendent, which gives us a better picture. By clicking on the link and reading upstream straight to the source, we find out that the student wrote, "Let me be clear. There is no truth whatsoever to this false statement or accusation. There have never been litter boxes within MPS schools." Then he added, "I find it such a source of disappointment that I felt the necessity to communicate this message to you." Misinformation like this is a disappointment for us too. Another article that came up in the keyword search was this one from the Times. They also confirmed that schools are not providing litter boxes in bathrooms. They reported that the woman in the video is Lisa Hansen, and in an email to the Times, she wrote that she is a concerned mom trying to protect her child. And we see this a lot with misinformation. Most often, people share false claims because they think that they are genuinely helping. But this parent was upset and was raising awareness over something that wasn't happening. And in doing so, spread a rumor that went way more viral than any of the fact checks debunking it. The claim was even shared by Michonne Maddock, a chairwoman of the Michigan Republican Party. She wrote, "Kids who identify as furries get a litter box in the school bathroom. Parent heroes will take back our schools." Yikes. But while this was kind of a silly claim that unfortunately gained traction online,
it's important
the
source of all the reporting, like the source of information is the claim of a concerned parent at a school board meeting.
Right. Yeah.
So this is a world without actual journalism.
Right.
Where someone reporting like at a meeting, that counts as citizen journalism, I guess. So that's what people are using for journalism, because we are forced to rely on each other because we trust each other as a polity, right? As a community, and we should. But there's something to say for professional, actual journalism, and I suppose we need to get better at explaining what separates journalism, even done as a hobby, as like it's not, you don't need a 4-year degree to do it, but as a job, as a task to do,
as a discipline,
as a discipline, or or as a task that is not the same as taking someone's word for it.
Yeah.
So maybe
not
it's
just
just
reporting
a matter,
hearsay.
Yeah, maybe it's just a matter of applying your high school education in that you have a first-hand source and a second-hand source. And this is a second-hand source. And you should have at least a one and a second-hand source. Or you want multiple first-hand sources, not just a second-hand source. Or you cannot only use a second-hand source. That's simple media literacy, but in a world where you lack first-hand sources, because that requires some effort. So it's just a matter of having a community member do that effort. And that effort should be supported.
Right. Well, I mean, this just seems to be the strategy of conservatives nowadays. This is the same way that CRT got inserted into the conversation. Is people said it was happening. Some right-wing outlets said it was happening in schools.
Yeah.
Parents went to school board meetings, and then they reported on those school board meetings without ever tracking down whether or not
it was
any of those schools were teaching it.
It was self-fulfilling evidence. The fact that the parents are there complaining about it is evidence that it's there. Because the school board is, in the same way that Kanye's mind works, the school board tells these parents to shut up and go away, or that they don't know what they're talking about, and that's evidence that they're onto something.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, they could be onto something as far as like local politicians and school boards are corrupt, or they're neoliberals, so they're not very humane in their dealings and they're doing austerity. But attacking them on those grounds is like attacking the system, and you can't do that. You might be benefiting from it, or you have a job, and hey, if you have a job in capitalism, you might as well be a capitalist yourself. That's the way people feel about it. That's how we're indoctrinated. So it doesn't scan in anyone's mind. People can't understand how they could understand things differently. And that's the task before us when we do actual journalism and we promote it to people. And that's kind of the commons I'm building with my radio station. I want to get to a point where we are being not only the example of good media literacy, of like consuming our media will actually make you smarter and not but well, actually no, anytime people see this stuff, they think they're being smarter. But I think this video actually isn't getting to the heart that there actually was a use of kitty litter in the classroom.
No.
So there was
scandalous.
There was an original like thing. So that like there's always this kernel of like this. There was something real that then became delusion, like extrapolated delusion in the mind of the conservative
morphed
parent.
into a nightmare. Yeah.
In the same way that like the mural painted that's very uwu is in the minds of the parents of the school district satanic, and they're making up how satanic it is when really it's just uwu. You know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah.
There's a character that looks like Star Butterfly. There's some symbols. It's some art that looks like Cartoon Network stuff. But anyway, but let's finish the video. Let's see if she mentions at the end. Otherwise, I'll have to look for.
Remember that there's a lot of myths and disinformation out there about gender identity, and viral false claims like this one can further spread misinformation about issues related to gender identity in general. But one last tip before you go: look for evidence. In the video, the woman says she heard this was happening, but doesn't provide any proof to back it up. Saying you heard something from someone who probably heard it from someone else is literally a game of telephone. So instead, make sure that the viral videos you're watching also include evidence before you share. Well, that pretty much covers it. Time for our rating. With multiple sources.
All right, you can stop it. So this is just a debunk, a media literacy kind of debunking, but I think it's worthwhile to, again, like to really rebut or to oppose something, you really got to say what's really happening, and that's how you. But in order to do that, you actually have to make a systemic critique of some type. So
I think this was.
is it?
Is this-
Yes, yeah, that's it. If that's the whole video, then that's it.
Lakewood High School. The typical pencils, binders, and books are back in the classroom, but it's a different item that's catching the attention of parents and teachers.
So this is called a Go Bucket. And, you know, it sounds just like it is.
Buckets filled with kitty litter, trash bags, and more.
Hand sanitizer.
An emergency bathroom for students during a lockdown.
Our world has certainly changed, and we've adapted to it.
John McDonald is in charge of safety in Jeffco schools and says roughly half of the district's classrooms now have the buckets.
It caught me off guard.
Cassie Lopez is a first-year teacher here and was handed her bucket during training last week.
So she
were
made
given buckets.
a TikTok. So this is ground zero TikTok here. So it's her clip where they take what she's saying, they clip out anything about lockdown.
Yep, they just
so
say kitty litter,
kitty litter bathroom, and this isn't normal.
and caught off guard, and this isn't normal. Yeah.
Because with Uvalde,
Also given.
usually a lockdown doesn't take more than an hour to resolve, even if it's a real shooter situation, right? But with Uvalde, you had a situation where the cops sat on their asses for 4 hours. So you had classrooms of kids who were in lockdown for multiple hours. So now you have school districts like, okay, in case we have a Uvalde situation, there need to be go buckets in classrooms.
Right. It's
Up. So it's
the
just,
absolute sad reality. Yeah.
and so since it's right wingers who think that gun violence is an acceptable loss, that they're not obviously going to see that as a problem, but they're going to see kitty litter buckets in classroom, let's mix shit up, or they see this, or they see
They'll just connect the dots they want. Yeah.
obviously someone with an agenda, with the actual agenda, makes the edited version of this, and then that's what's shown to the parents, who then extrapolate Satanism on
hit
it.
the wall. Yeah.
Furry, because it's like, well, why else would a kid want to use a kitty litter bucket? It must be a furry. And then they repeat that, and then others repeat that.
Mm-hmm.
It madness.
Yep. All right. Let's keep going.
And first aid kits, toilet paper. We were given kitty litter to put in the buckets.
Lopez posted a video of her reaction online.
It was upsetting just because it's very symbolic of where our society is at right now. The fact that there is a need to have a makeshift toilet in our classroom just, says so much about where we're at.
She says, don't get her wrong, she's glad the buckets exist, but she says the idea behind them is uncomfortable. Parents.
The idea of children being so terrified for so long that they might have to go to the bathroom. Not the idea that there are furry kids.
Seem to agree.
I thought it was a little weird, but still, I thought it was I think it'd be a good idea for them.
A weird idea, but obviously a needed one or a thought of one. So, yay for whoever thought of it.
I tell everybody we're only limited by our imagination. We're only limited by the box that we're thinking in.
We
So
can't
let's start
imagine a
thinking outside the
gun-free
box.
school
Lakewood,
environment.
Evan Krugel,
No.
Fox
We
31.
can't imagine a society without random, sarcastic terrorism.
Can't imagine.
That's what we can't. We can't imagine that.
Can't imagine police that actually put their life on the line for the sake of children.
So that even if there is a shooter situation, it's resolved in the time it takes before a kid has to pay.
Right.
God.
No. It's much easier just to hunker down.
So even the reporting, like I said, the liberal, local news reporting reports the story honestly, but can't make a real critique. I mean, it's not their job to, I suppose. That'd be commentary. Kill litter also probably good for cleaning up puke.
Sure.
And kids
Or
puke.
going on the sidewalk if it's icy out.
That's what Perennial Green was saying.
Oh yeah, I missed that coming. But yeah,
Though I've never heard of using cat litter as a de-icer, but
it just adds grit. It does the same thing as sand does.
Than use sand. I mean,
right.
I can't imagine sand being costing more than cat litter. Cat litter is expensive, depending on what type you get, I guess. But I can't. Maybe it's grittier than sand, I guess. I can imagine.
I don't know. I've heard people using it. I've never used it myself. I will never use
I guess
sand
people
or
can't
salt.
buy a
but-
bag of sand.
I don't know.
Sand's pretty cheap, you know.
I mean, with the supply line these days, maybe clay is, cheaper than sand, or more easily available.
Well, it kind of in some sidewalks are, instead of trying to make them as smooth as possible, you actually kind of pour them to give them some
Texture,
texture,
yeah.
jagginess.
Yeah.
And this keeps ice from forming as a full sheet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was that. Sam was like mega pissed when he was reacting to that video.
Right.
And this was because it was right after like Joe Rogan was literally repeating
Just uncritically
a friend of
platforming
mine
those
knows
right-wing
a
ideas.
teacher
Buddy
at
of
the
mine.
school.
Joe Rogan's got a buddy for every situation. It's amazing.
It's kind of a euphemism, I guess. Maybe if you ask, like it's using it as a euphemism.
Just gonna pull it out of my ass, but yeah, it sounds believable.
It's
so
a way
believe
of
it.
saying I heard somewhere, but
Yeah.
that's too obviously bullshit. So you have to, it has to be like, oh, I heard from a real person, and obviously you wouldn't say my buddy of mine is full of shit.
Right? Yeah, you call him a full of shit.
Okay, all right, yeah. So let's move on to local news for me, but obviously of national import. Amazon Union.
Oh, okay.
Give me.
Did you have a link for that? Or
I
you want me to
do. Just give me a moment.
search for it.
Guess I'll go with this. So, the second Amazon unionization vote. Well, I guess it's not the second one, because there's the Bessemer, Alabama. So I guess this will make it the third. Was near. It was the Albany warehouse, but it's in Skodak, which is the rural across the river area that's south of Albany. I had a teacher who lived there, and she taught at Albany High, and I guess it's like a half-hour commute, and she would kind of talk about like it's far, like in
on
the
their
movies.
fellow.
She's like, I live in Skodak. That's where you cross someone, they shoot you. She would joke about it, but it was AP English. She's a lit teacher, so she's a very bookish person, and but she would like have this attitude. Oh yeah, she would constantly reference that she was raised by nuns or she went to Catholic schools, and like they beat the shit out of you. You remember how to, but it's also like, oh, they forced me to read this in Catholic school. I hate this book. There would be books where she would. She was a great teacher because she had opinions. She would be like, we'd have 2 weeks to read Frankenstein, and she would walk in, when we were going to start discussing, goes like, well, that was a piece of shit, wasn't it? She didn't swear, but it was like, that sucks.
That's awesome.
Did anyone else finish that drag? But she loved Huckleberry Finn. Absolutely loved. So we spent like a lot longer on Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah. That's fun. All right, let's see what somehow.
No. Okay, we're only focusing on the first half hour. Please don't. We're not. No, we're not going through all of it. We're only focusing on the first half hour, but we're not listening to all of it, because Jordan Cheriton repeats himself a lot. It's one of the things. My only complaint about him is the streams. He repeats himself. So you want to start at the beginning, or start? 5 minutes in?
Do start at the beginning.
Yeah,
5 minutes.
5 minutes in. Oh, I didn't say start half hour over. We're only covering.
Okay, well that's where it automatically started for some reason.
Oh, weird. Oh, because that's where I had it.
I don't know. Maybe I.
Okay.
In Staten Island, and they have really increased the temperature. So, first, let's give you some background. ALB1, which is an Amazon warehouse in Skodak, which is right outside of Albany. ALB1 got the green light to hold a union election about probably 2 months ago. So they have been doing what the JFK 8 workers have been doing, organizing, speaking with workers in the warehouse. They're doing it with Amazon Labor Union. So if they win their union election, they would be represented by Amazon Labor Union, which is run by Christian Smalls of JFK 8 Staten Island. Skodak which is right outside of Albany. I'm
But
told
I think Smalls
among
also
workers at the plant,
he was
a good 30 to
he
40%
was
of the
like-
workers are on food stamps.
He
so
was
these
union
are
building for like
impoverished.
a whole year.
Yeah.
Smalls was like union building in JFK for a whole year. So I think the secret to their success, or why, materialistically, why they succeeded there, and they didn't succeed in Bessemer, Alabama, and they did not win in Skodak. Spoiler. Is the campaign was only 2 months, when the campaign needs to be a year. So, and that goes for
really
any
lay that groundwork.
Yeah,
Okay.
any campaign really. That's got to succeed.
People working at Amazon in Albany. Yet the warehouse has about 800 to 900 workers, and they got enough. They showed to the National Labor Relations Board enough interest, meaning they got enough union cards that were signed yes in terms of workers interested in holding a union election. So they were awarded a union election. So that started on Wednesday. The union election started on Wednesday. I went up there on Monday to cover a rally. Before we get to the exclusive rampant union busting, let me just show you a little bit from the lead organizer so you kind of get a feel for what's been going on the ground at this warehouse and why they wanted to unionize in the first place. If we could play my interview with Heather Goodall, who's a worker there. Jordan, I'm here in front of ALB1, the Skodak warehouse right outside of Albany, that in 2 days has another historic union election. And Heather, you've been leading the charge here. You haven't been working here that long, which is kind of interesting that you got in and right away kind of saw a lot was needed. Tell me when you started here, what made you want to organize a union?
So there was actually a variety of things, and I guess, I would say the first red flag was the fact that I had put on a safety harness and a vest for the first time in my life. Never driven a piece of heavy machinery, never wore any kind of equipment, but in 2 days after that vest was on, I was operating this piece of heavy machinery and raising a cage to retrieve items, mattresses, air conditioners, and heights of 25 feet. So to me, that raised a little bit of alarm bells. How is this happening? And then shortly after, I started to hear stories about the equipment breaking in the warehouse. I started to see more frequent ambulances.
I feel like that's against the law.
I started to hear
you need
injuries.
a license to operate a
Yeah, you gotta be like
forklift.
forklift certified. Like I think that's a nationwide thing. Like I operate a Bobcat at my work. I didn't have to go through any certification, but even that, like they're not having me do really delicate maneuvers after
Maybe
the
that's
handful of times I've
Amazon's
done it.
way of skirting it. So a Bobcat is not a full forklift, you're saying?
Yeah, I don't know.
So you don't need a license, but you definitely in New York you need a license for a forklift.
Yeah.
But it's surprising.
People not getting approved for their short-term disability. And then, I had heard a story from a worker about him suffering a stroke in the warehouse on Thanksgiving, and he wasn't properly compensated, came back. So I started to really see workers that were in need of that extra support and bringing them together to unite against Amazon so that they could, get those better working conditions and those safer working conditions.
And from what I was told, Amazon seems to have more consultants here, union busters, than managers in some cases. Talk to me about the organizing and what you guys have been up against in terms of the union busting.
So, it was no secret when we started this journey that we were going to be up against Amazon and their $4.3 million invested into, the meetings and the propaganda throughout the warehouse. So more recently, we've seen the warehouse completely flooded with operations managers from throughout the country that will be gone the minute the election is over, and these employee relations consultants and even HR managers. And they're claiming that they're here to talk about the working conditions and improving them. So you can imagine, that there was a little bit of information revealed when we had a fire and with the warehouse flooded with operations managers, employee relations, and HR, that there were missing fire extinguishers on some of the pillars. How is that even possible? If you're here to help us with working conditions and to understand our concerns, how are you walking around, talking to workers, asking them about their feeling on the union, which they're not supposed to do, pulling them into meetings, and you don't even see that we needed fire extinguishers when a fire broke out? And they, all of our concerns have fallen on deaf ears. So they've made it clear that they're really not here to help. And they've made it clear by examples like that.
I also find it interesting because Alabama had a fire. They closed down for several days. You guys have a fire. They closed down the day shift, but suddenly it's okay to come back for the night shift. So it seems like a lot of, in Staten Island, they were like, no, you're coming back. So it seems like some places will close down. Here, they brought you back pretty quickly.
They did. And actually, I was on the phone the next day with our attorneys and OSHA. I'm expressing my concern not only with regard to the missing fire extinguishers, but the fact that even if the building was cleared by the fire department and local authorities, when I arrived when I was hearing feedback, I was concerned for the workers that suffer things such as, asthma, shortness of breath, heart conditions. What about the fact that there might be a lingering odor that could affect some of those additional health ailments? And then when I arrived on the property to check things out, the doors were open with the fans on full blast. If the building is safe, then why are the doors open with the fans on full blast? Because look right now, there's one door open with no fan. So I think that basically was also a heightened level of concern.
And talk to me about the warehouse. Seems like 500-600 workers. What's kind of the mood in there now? Because obviously there's signs everywhere, union, third party, and you guys want to make money and blah, 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 blah. I know, there's a lot of interest because you guys got the green light to hold an election. Do you think a lot of the people that have been on the fence are starting to gravitate more towards voting yes?
I do. I really do. I think that they're starting to really see through Amazon's true intention of shutting down the union. And I think that they're starting to also expand on their knowledge about the Amazon labor union that we work with together. I mean, this is a unity thing. So I think that they're educating themselves, they're having more conversations, they're learning more, and they're really reaching out to get the information to make an informed decision, which is incredibly inspiring and powerful. So I feel a shift in the energy, and I feel a shift in the right direction. Sorry.
It's just crazy. You're hearing people with prostate cancer. That's some of the interview. The full interview is up on the channel, YouTube. Suppress that too, so check it out. I usually wait till the end.
So you next kind of note is to go to 15 minutes, which isn't that much further, I suppose, or 16 minutes.
From DC. Obviously, we're certainly not getting enough from Biden. Frankly, I don't think we're getting much in terms of a fight from the elected progressives in Congress. So right here, if you want actual movement in terms of material gain, structural change for workers, it's these union drives. It's getting more and more of these warehouses unionized. Obviously, you have a union, it makes it easier for workers to go on strike, as we've seen with the strike wave last year and this year. So obviously, Amazon did plenty of union busting to stop the workers at JFK8 from unionizing. They were unsuccessful. Here, they have totally ratcheted up the temperature. I have not seen anything like this in covering unions or union movements. So I'm just going to start with my Twitter thread from this morning. If you're on Twitter, give it a retweet so we can get it circulated more. I'll drop the tweet link in the super chat. Keep those super chats coming. I'll read the rest at the end. So exclusive. As Amazon ALB1, this is the Albany warehouse, holds its union election, HR is falsely telling pro-union workers serving as legal observers they must use their limited unpaid time off hours or vacation time in order to serve as union observers, legal observers, while workers that perform legal observation on behalf of Amazon, meaning anti-union workers, they're still on the clock getting paid. Wow. So first of all, this is not legal. It's not legal because legally they are allowed workers who want to serve as legal observers, and legal observers meaning sit inside the tent where they're voting and observe what's going on to make sure Amazon is not rigging the game and not stealing the election. They are allowed to do that, and they don't have to take unpaid time off or vacation time. They just wouldn't be paid for those hours. But why this is important, and if you work at Amazon, you know this, you don't get a lot of unpaid time off, what they call UPT. It's a precious commodity at Amazon, your unpaid time off, and that accrues. You get more as you work. If you go into the negative of unpaid time off, you could face termination, and I see that happen to countless workers at the Staten Island warehouse who were terminated after going negative in terms of how much unpaid time off they had. Interestingly enough, most of those workers were pro-union.
So go 20 minutes if for the You can see, like, so there's some audio.
Use UPT or vacation, and that's absolutely not true.
That was the directive I got.
Who gave you that information? Yes. Who gave you that information?
That was given to me by Jess this morning.
Okay, so that is absolutely not true, and the fact that you guys are not giving our servers the proper information is extremely concerning. Okay. So we need to clarify this so that we can in turn provide them with the right information. And is there any reason that you guys are not educated on the law and what provisions the observers have?
I will find out. I asked the question and I relayed the information. So I will go back and re-clarify. Okay. And I'll let you know.
Okay, how long will that take? Perfect.
10 minutes later, Jude returned with the following information.
Hey Jude, I have a question. How come you guys aren't telling everybody that when the voting booth is open, they have the full 4 hours? When the voting booth is open, they have a full 4 hours. How come they don't know that?
They should. They know they can leave at any time.
Every associate in this building knows that they have the full 4 hours?
They know they could go out and vote at any time.
No, do they know that they have the full 4 hours?
Let's talk about one issue
Okay.
at a time.
All right, because you guys aren't really
So,
giving. Go ahead.
The issue that you were asking me about, they re-verified it, and they said that is actually.
It is absolutely not the law.
I'm not gonna argue.
So wait, you're telling me that your vote, let me get this straight, Jude, because I know the law, okay? Our observers have the right to take the full 4 hours, right? You don't have to pay them, but they do not have to,
What was told to me.
What was told to you?
The information that was told to me is that if someone is volunteering to observe for the ALU, they are doing that on their own time.
No, they're not, Jude. They get the full 4 hours.
Clarify anything farther than what I have been told.
Who told you that?
I was just told by the ER people.
Who?
The different people that are.
Have them come and tell me, because
they're in a meeting right now.
They're not in a meeting. I just saw him right there.
Further discuss it in the morning with you.
No.
That is where it's at right now.
Dude, I'm telling you that if you guys do this, I guarantee that our attorney will file charges. And why are you telling people that it is not true? They get those hours to be an observer.
Clarify it in the morning with the rest of
But by the morning, you will have told an observer the wrong information.
Heather, I am relaying information that was told to me. That's as far as.
So you guys don't know the law, or you're lying?
No.
Which one is it?
I am going to tell you, and I relay to you the information that was told to me.
Okay.
I am not going to debate it any farther.
You don't need to debate it. It's in black and white. It's the law.
All right. That's where we're at.
So you guys are violating the law.
I am not violating anything.
You are violating the law.
I am relaying information to you that was told to
Then
me.
tell them to come and tell me.
I'm not going to debate it any longer with you. If you want to debate it further, you can speak with the people.
Then tell them to come.
Okay? They're in a meeting right now, so you can discuss it further.
They're in a meeting because they don't want to come and tell me that they are violating the law.
You can discuss that within the morning. I was just told.
So if these associates decide that they don't want to work and they want to get paid, that's a violation, right?
I am done with the conversation. I have relayed to you.
Okay, well, let me tell you something. I will be right here in the morning, Jude. You guys need to stop right.
So that's the head organizer for the union.
So isn't that a nightmare?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to search for when the next clip thing is. So, because he gives a lot of color commentary, rants about the Dems. You know, Gillibrand was there at the rally, Senator Gillibrand.
Mhm.
And of course, you know, any Dem, progressive or otherwise, even like Gillibrand, will give words of support for unions. But it's all just bullshit. Or rather, they'll give words of support, but only words of support, which is, you know, to some enough actually. That's enough to call this a positive union environment in New York. The other half being that we're not a right to work state, and any right to work, you know, proposal would have not have gotten any momentum. You know, because it would have actually been anti-union to do that. So Dems can simply kind of be neutral almost, but give words of encouragement, and that's counts as positive because it's neutral plus words of encouragement instead of
Still actively hostile and working against.
Right. But
pretty,
not really
pretty low bar.
Not really going out of their way to offer help.
Sure.
As in the case that so we've learned that they didn't really have good observers for the voting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the other one he covers is just related to how a guy that the consultants are basically harassing the workers. They're constantly like interrupting their work or like talking to every worker about how they're going to go vote on the union, or whether they're leaning, you know, they're polling, and they're constantly watching. So it's an oppressive environment, and this one guy told one of the consultants to leave him alone, and he was getting reprimanded for it, and he was like going to be put on leave, and the management wasn't giving it in writing. Oh, sorry, that they were investigating him, but they weren't giving him it in writing why they were investigating him. What was his infraction? And so the next the other clip that I think we could skip is Miss Goodall having a very similar argument with management or a manager about just like, can you just give him it in writing why you're investigating him? He deserves to know. He's also a disabled man, or a man with a disability. And then they're saying that giving him like explaining why they're investigating him would be an accommodation. And so that's
what?
That's an extra thing they'd be
Oh
going out
my
of their way to
God,
do.
what a
And
stretch.
they're using that as an excuse for why they don't have to do it, or it's like,
Wow.
well, it's because you don't accommodations have to be appropriate or within reason. So that would be not within reason. So that's an excuse not to do it.
That's amazing.
So you can guess that the vote didn't go well. It was 2-1 against.
Yeah.
Which doesn't match the tone that Goodall had
sucks.
at the rally, that she was seeing progress, that she was having, if when you're canvassing workers, and if you can do a count of how many positives you have or people on the fence or neutrals, and she usually, an organizer will be real or not be bullshitting and say like, yeah, we're working, it's really hard, we're not making too much progress, or like we're doing the best we can, we're learning lessons. That's usually what you say when you know that you lost legitimately, or that you knew, like you were not optimistic going in, but you did the best you can. But the tone of the organizing committee was very positive. So it kind of, to me, it makes it, because I'm biased, but it makes me sus that there was foul play. And Jordan is going through all of the evidence that Goodall has recorded. She records every conversation. They are nightmares, dealing, the nightmare of dealing with a bureaucrat who just wants to put you in your place or keep you in a place, and giving you an inch would require basically tearing down the edifice of the institution down, which is sort of like what's implied if you give a random customer what they want, or a worker, or if you're a bureaucrat or someone within a bureaucracy, and you would give someone your full attention, full service, it grinds everything to a halt. So you have to find all the ways to not serve people to the fullest, because then no work would be done, or certain people would be satisfied, but a lot of other people would be let down, or would slow everything up. At least so long as, say, my department and others, that we're understaffed, we could be twice as fast. We are getting 3 new people, I've learned. So we will actually be, my side of things, we'll actually be able to catch up, because another office assistant is being hired.
Oh, hey.
That is good news. But we could always use, like, there's 12 cubicles that are empty in my office. So that's 12 that could be filled. I thought they were just empty because to space people out for the pandemic. But actually that doesn't seem to be the case. They weren't empty just to space people out, because if we wanted to space people out, we'd simply have half the people working from home. But that actually wasn't the case. You did have people working from home, and that just meant only like a third of the office is filled up, as people are alternated. But actually, no, it was just that we are like down 10 people. We could have 10 more people in that office comfortably, and fill all the cubicles. And we would have instead of a 3-month turnaround, we would have a 1-month turnaround. Because our review is the step between a school district getting a vote on the bond for a project, or the funding stream for a project through the school budget, their capital budget, and sending us the letter, the intent that they're going to do a project. We start a review, architects give us the plans and documents, and it takes us we have a 3-month turnaround. But our review is what's in the step between them getting the project documents and going to bid. And so time's money,
right?
So the longer we take, and sometimes it's like they have a deadline to meet of sorts.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's with the libraries, there were library grants, so there was a big rush in the mid-September, and Yeah, so it's good news that because all of the or I'll call them project managers for ease, but like we should have 4 or 5 of them, but we have 3, but one usually takes a 2-week vacation, and that's so it's like we have 2, but then one of them had health issues all September, so it's like felt like we only had 1, which is terrible because usually when it comes to school districts calling us up for an update or a status or a question involving their funding, it has to go with the project manager. And some of them were literally telling me like, I've been trying to email her for 2 weeks and I'm not getting any response. What gives? It's deviant. We're like the DMV in some ways.
Oh no.
But like the DMV, if that whole row of clerk desks is actually filled with clerks, the DMV is really fast. In and out in 10 minutes was one experience I had when there was enough clerks. It's when there's only 3 that, because it's a low volume day or something, that the DMV may take an hour or it gets its reputation. But it's all austerity, So anyway, I think we can move on from the labor thing unless you want more of that.
No. That was good coverage.
Let's go to, and I covered that on my show, but mostly just the vote and the Times Union reporting on it and their usual neutral way, where they give both sides, where Amazon says, we're happy that our team chose to have a direct relationship with us after spending millions, probably
millions,
to stop this. And so it's hard to tease out what was like legitimately people were scared or cajoled into not voting no.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lack of voters, actually. 2/3 of the workers voted in the union election.
Okay.
But it was 400 to 200. Let's see.
Disheartening.
Yeah. But on the upshot, actually, I'll include this in the commentary, that it was when the union campaign started, right? Because this is after months of talking to people about unionizing. They announced a pay hike, Amazon, at this warehouse. So in just having the union election, everyone got a raise as a way of, crumbs, and it's not on the workers' terms, and that's the trade-off. The big kind of thing to keep in mind when it comes to interacting with the system is the system, after you push and fight, the system may give you what you want, but it'll be on its terms. And that's sort of a reason that, the true radicals will reject the crumbs, reject the raise, say, no, we're going to get the raise through the union or not at all. Which is sort of what's occurring with Starbucks, where Starbucks says you'll get everything that a union contract would give you, but we're going to give it to you without you unionizing. And now anyone who has unionized will have to bargain for it. Oh, they have to go through all this work, and they may not even get everything you're getting. So, but it's on Starbucks terms. So, but anyway, in just having the election and just fighting, because it's the fight you need to have, you get something. You might get crumbs from the system, which is a positive outcome. The next step is then to continue to get that agency. So you get the raise and the agency. And in that way, the union exists, whether or not it's officially recognized. The union is real because it's in the past few years that Amazon Labor Union or Amazon Workers United, which I guess is a separate organization maybe, they are doing collective action in Amazon warehouses without it being a union or a recognized union with a contract. But they do get things. They get those fire extinguishers because they walk out if they don't get it. Or they take some action for a day, and it works. Or in one case I read about, it was air conditioning, getting fans installed. There weren't even fans.
Huge at
in
those warehouses,
100-degree warehouse. They got fans or air conditioning units put in, which is a real plus as far as conditions go. And they got it through a collective strike action. Maybe not a strike action, but it was collective action where literally 100 of the workers showed up in the manager's office to say like we're gonna have serious issues because we're dying here. So, and that was the case repeated at the Albany warehouse is similar to others where they're having an ambulance come every like week or so. That there's some medical incident, somebody is
Right.
collapsing, somebody's getting hurt. Through
Or they just hire to have them on site rather than actually putting in air conditioning because it's cheaper to send them in an ambulance.
And it was quoted in the Times Union article, and that I ran about during my show, is that one of the workers who voted no that they interviewed, I guess, they didn't interview too many yes votes, I guess, except Goodall, which shows a bias. But it was like his only statement, or the statement quoted, is that like a warehouse job isn't a career. I don't plan on being here long, or that's the
So
people who
screw
voted,
everyone who does.
the people who voted no don't see it as a
God.
job that they're going to stay very long at. But what's funny is that like even these actual industrial jobs, the jobs that used to be the careers that you would have good pay, they were careers when they were unionized, suddenly aren't career jobs when they're not unionized. So the only jobs that are career jobs are either in these profitable sectors like tech, or they are or they're the remaining industries that are unionized, which the article mentioned that New York does in fact have double the unionization rate as the rest of the country. We're at like 23% versus the 11 in the rest of the country. And this is just because of the legacy of strong labor movement in New York City and else, and the rest of the state too, I suppose. Though we lost our industrial union power, we didn't lose the rest, which is good segue for the next piece. I'll link you.
Might have to wait on that one. We're getting pretty close to
10.
the
Shit.
end of the
10,
show.
10 for me.
Yeah, 10 for you.
It's short though.
But I can at least put the link in the chat for everybody so
I
they can look at it
suppose.
on their own time.
Well, we started. We'll do it on our next time.
Okay.
Watch later.
Fair enough.
So yeah.
Because I also do want to give you a chance to talk about the things you've been up to and
Yeah. So anyway, next time we'll do a video, 14-minute, about is a Taiwanese guy, 20-something sounds like, and he's just talking about the semiconductor industry, which is really big in Taiwan, and how it's big news in America to open semiconductor factories. Like this is how we're bringing factory jobs back to America, but they're actually technical. Even the machine, like blue collar type of work, requires like practically a engineering degree or a master's,
right?
And but it's not as sexy, or rather, he explains the divergence between the coders and the software side, who get paid much better, but maybe they're paid the same, but they get to work from home or they're in an office, versus the people who have to put on the white clean suits. So what am I doing? I'm back to doing the show again. What's Left in Albany. It's 1 hour. I have uploaded and posted this morning, or was it last night? No, it was this morning. So that is on the website now, and I posted that on my socials. Not all of them, Facebook and Twitter at the moment. If we don't talk before Election Day, though I think we will, if you're in New York, write in Howie Hawkins. I've made some memes about it. But
Nice.
What am I doing next week? Well, who knows? It's really, I put in city bits, because basically I have this smattering of local news stories from the Times Union, and I read them. They take 5 minutes each, basically, and I comment on them. So listing off everything I cover every episode isn't worth it. It's too much text. I'd rather just say city bits. I'm just covering local news, things that are happening, random bits. I could do what I did with the Three Lefts and try to make themed episodes, but that's this is I'm switching styles completely now. You know.
I like it.
So I'm not sure what I'm still working out the naming conventions, plus the fact that I need to change the logo and have a new banner. Perhaps I need to make a new banner. I was making a logo and I was kind of testing it, but I didn't really like where I was going with it. I think the first draft works, but it doesn't communicate what the show's about, or something. It needs to be like a worker or something. I'm just not sure how to communicate the show well, because just having 3 flags or 3 lefts, I could be more abstract with it, because it is more about the academic side. But when it's really about news in Albany that's left wing, how to represent that, I feel like it needs to be a little more robust, but I still want it to be kind of simple. But I am getting a theme song for the show. My musician friend I have commissioned. I'm paying him top dollar to make a composition of that. We covered this. I showed you the music video. Party Albany. So he's
right.
He gave me the draft. It's looking good. I was bobbing my head. I think I like what he's going to do.
Awesome.
So I'll be satisfied. And I also have a theme song. So I may keep using the Kill la Kill theme for the ending theme, but I don't know. Maybe I'll just use it twice. So the radio station is my top priority right now, though. Doing the show now I'm going to the studio frequently enough. Like, well, I might as well go Tuesday and do the show. But that also means there's an evening where I need to edit the show and post it. So, but I need to get in that rhythm and find out what the right evening to do that is, because it kind of disrupts or stops me from going out and having a social life, which the last several months I just not have much of. Not frequently anyway, and so I get in the habit of not having a social life, so it's sort of a downward spiral. But I'm not feeling like it's downward because I'm interacting with so many people anyway in my life with my full-time job. There's literally 20 people I'm interacting with, so you don't feel completely isolated when you're working in an office environment.
Absolutely.
Real people and a real job.
Fair enough.
But so that's it. I'm taking a state test beginning of the month for the office assistant 2, which is also the administrative assistant, which grade 9, so next grade up basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good luck.
That's just to get on the list, it's good, but I'm qualified to take this now that I'm in assistant 1. So it's kind of how you progress, I guess. Otherwise, you get internally. The most promotion is internal. You go from office to office. I'm not sure I really want to leave this office, but there's no OA2 position. The next position up is like program aide, I guess, and those are filled pretty well. Though technically my supervisor is a program aide, and he is definitely close to retirement. Like, he is out half the week. He takes a lot of days. He takes a lot of days off. He must have saved them up over years, because he takes a lot of days off.
Quite a few.
But it's mostly health. It seems he's sick. He's sick very frequently.
That's unfortunate.
But when he is in, he works the minimum amount, whatever minimum amount that he needs to do, and he leaves like at lunch or at 1, whatever he's able. When the work is done, and he doesn't need to do more. So he's definitely living the life, but he's very close to retirement, so he's kind of allowed to. And when he said and once the second office assistant 1 is in here, it's like I will be able to do absolutely as little as possible. He's like, once there's 2 of you, it's because he's still doing some of the things I should be doing. But it's like, please don't give me everything. I can't do it. Okay, so any other questions?
All right.
Any questions? Let's.
No, that all sounds really cool. I look
About 10
forward
o'clock.
to.
Good luck with your house moving.
Thank you.
What kind of house is it?
Appreciate it. Single family detached. It's in the city of St. Paul still, so we are still in the city core, which is nice. Just about 5 minutes from downtown St. Paul.
Transit options.
Yep, lots of transit lines that go by. I don't know how well they run on the weekends. I've had trouble with those lines before.
So it's
Metro
attached.
Transit's
Do you
not
have a good
great
yard?
on the weekend. It's got a nice size yard, which is one thing I'm really excited
Is it
about.
south facing?
It is indeed, and they're taking down a big dying ash tree that's in front of the house, so we'll get tons of sun exposure once that's down.
But that would be the north side of the house then.
No, that's on the south. So the front of the house faces south.
Okay.
So
So your yard is north facing then. So it's
so the backyard is north facing.
That'll be trickier. It'll be in shadow most of the time.
Yeah, I mean it's only a 2-story, so it's not like there's a whole lot of shadow. I don't think it even goes half.
If your yard's long enough, you know.
Yeah, it's a pretty long lot. It's a good sized lot, so we'll have a lot of space to play around with.
All right.
So yeah, it's good. New appliances, new original woodwork, and a lot of it.
Spending, a lot of things you gotta spend money on now.
Well, I mean, yeah. Thankfully, it's not the appliances. We're gonna have to get a radon mitigation system. That's gonna be one of the big expenses. Probably gonna have to replace the boiler because it's getting old.
Where's the radon exactly?
In the basement. The house was built in 1890. It's one of those old limestone foundations, so stuff leaks in. And the radon's not like crazy out of control. It's like 1 point above where it's supposed to be, but no point in taking chances.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you need more of a vapor barrier on the inside.
We may need to put a
wall.
vapor barrier. Yeah.
Kind of finish the basement.
Yeah.
So it's an
that's
unfinished
possible.
basement, and if you finish it up, you'll have containment.
Yeah. Although it's a very low ceiling. A lot of the houses that we've seen from that era are low ceilings. So I mean, I guess that's a relative statement. I think my
tall?
wife. I'm 6'4", so I'm ducking everywhere. I don't know that my wife would have to. But also the stairway getting down there, I literally have to go down backwards. Otherwise, there's no contorting enough to get around.
People were less obese.
Yeah. Well, I mean, less tall as well. So.
Or you only had servants going down there, so
that's true. But I mean, there's only the boiler is the only thing in the basement. The washer dryer's on the main floor. Luckily.
So. No, that reminds me of my brother's house.
Yeah,
which is practically a dirt basement. So.
Yeah, well, this is at least a sealed basement, so got that going for us. But
yeah, the good ones are the ones that at least have a brick floor.
For sure. So
okay,
yeah, so that's
so
fun.
you got to get up early. I wish I would.
I do,
longer.
unfortunately. I do too.
Is it possible we could do next Sunday?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's make a plan for next Sunday. Catch up for the the time that we've missed.
I'll have
sure.
I'll have some more stuff and some of the videos we didn't get to today.
Sure. Sounds great. I look forward to it. Thanks for being on the show again. It's always informative and fun. So yeah, have a great weekend.
Bella ciao.
See ya. All right, that was Dan Plaat of the Three Left Show. You can go check out all his stuff. I put a link up recently, but I'll put it again. This is the most recent episode. It is still at 3lefts.news, although he's changed the name to What's Left in Albany. So just keep that in mind. But this last one is on union busting. I don't know why it doesn't like me doing that. I keep having to re-sign in to paste that link. All right, now's the time when we raid another channel. There's a few of us here on Twitch, so if you have any suggestions of someone you would like us to raid into, now's the time to shout it out. Otherwise, I will just pick someone that I think y'all will like. I'm kind of leading towards Street Fight Radio if it's still on the air. I saw it was on earlier. Yeah, Street Fight Radio is on. It's a call-in show. They call themselves an anarcho comedy show. It's always a fun time. They talk about music, like punk rock music and leftism and all sorts of cool stuff. So, unless any of you have any suggestions, we will raid into them. Here's the link if you're finding this video on a different platform at a different time. So you too can check out Street Fight Radio on Twitch. And I guess seeing no other suggestions yet, that's the way we're going to go. So thank you all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you all tomorrow night. We're going to continue on with Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. We are talking about how the U.S. has massively screwed over the Native Americans basically since the inception of the country, and far before. Basically since the setting foot on the country, Europeans have not had great relationships with the Native people. So, not exactly cheery stuff, but it's important stuff to know. That's how I tend to look at that sort of thing. But that'll be tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I hope to see you all there. Here goes the raid. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.